Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. It is Tuesday, February 24th, 8:47 a.m. You know, time is relative. Time is subjective. For some people, you could be late. For some people, you could be early. For some people, you could be right when you need them to be. So having said that, I don't know what the hell I just said, but that's my excuse today for being late. We are live. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. It is Tuesday. Nvda earnings is tomorrow. That's going to be a very, very big deal. We're obviously going to talk a lot about Nvda earnings going into tomorrow because that is likely going to dictate the trajectory of the market. Although over the past 18 quarters, still cannot say that word, but over the past 18 quarters, Nvda has moved an average of 3.9% to the upside. So maybe it's not going to be as volatile as it has been in the past. And the last time we actually really had a move was back in February of 2024 and moved up about 16%. So we really haven't had a 10% up or down move, although the implied volatility is 10%. And so we're going to see how this ends up playing out going into Nvda earnings. On top of that, today you do have the State of the Union. So Trump will be addressing Congress live at around 9 p.m. I will be streaming that live as well, and we'll talk about what happens with that. The Supreme Court justices will be in the very front that Trump will be talking to. He's pretty pissed off that he lost on this 6-3 decision for his tariff, so we'll see what he has to say there, but that's going to be very important. He also did mention yesterday that his speech is going to be very, quote-unquote, long because they have a lot of accomplishments to talk about. So it's going to be a long night for those that are with me that will be checking out the State of the Union. And then we got a bunch of headlines this morning that we'll get into. We also have a lot of earnings after the bell that we'll talk about, and we'll preview some of those earnings that will be happening today. The biggest headline of the day, which we'll get started with right now, because obviously this is the news that I'm sure everyone is looking at. AMD up 10% right here in the pre-market. This is an interesting one. And I think it makes sense why it's up 10% in the pre-market, but it's also a little confusing when you go deeper into how Lisa Su got this stock to pump. So what's going on right here? AMD signs a 5-year deal with none other than Meta. Now, really important before we get into this deal, last week, or I think it was a week and a half ago, when Nvidia signed their deal with Meta and AMD sold off, as soon as that news broke, I did not feel that was bearish for AMD, because at the end of the day, Meta is spending $135 billion on compute. Not all of it's going to Nvidia. It's going to be diversified and spread across a lot of different vendors and providers. So the market selling that off was really stupid, because eventually AMD was going to get some type of a deal as well, even if it wasn't from Meta. In this case, it was from Meta. Meta and AMD already have had a very long relationship. So now AMD pumping on it just goes to show, again, how knee-jerk the market can be when it comes to these reactions. But it's going to be a 5-year deal, double-digit billions of dollars per gigawatt, 6 gigawatts, and Meta will buy AMD chips and computers designed to run artificial intelligence models over 5 years, beginning the second half of 2026. And here's the big part of the deal, which is, well, I'm curious what AMD shareholders have to say about it. And will receive warrants to buy 160 million AMD shares. Now, that part sounds very familiar to a deal, if you guys remember, from October 6, 2025. AMD and OpenAI announced strategic partnership to deploy 6 gigawatts, the same number of gigawatts that this deal has with Meta, also was for OpenAI. And by the way, OpenAI also had the right to buy 160 million warrants, or had warrants to buy 160 million shares on certain milestones if AMD is able to deliver the gigawatt capacity that is needed for OpenAI to be able to pay them. I think it was like $10 or $15 billion per gigawatt. It's almost like it's the exact same deal for Meta that they're doing with OpenAI. And the broader question that I have, as soon as I saw this deal, here's Meta's tweet on it, that today we're announcing a multi-year agreement with AMD. The question I had was, do they think OpenAI is not good for the money? Because if they think OpenAI is good for the money, that means Lisa Su has agreed to give up 20% of her company to be able to land these contracts, which, I mean, look, I guess you have to do that, but it's not necessarily coming from a position of strength when you have to give up 20% of your company just to get people to buy your product. Like, you're not seeing Nvidia do that. Now, I get it. Nvidia is different than AMD. AMD has to do a lot of different things to be able to generate that type of revenue potential. I own AMD. I bought AMD back at like 206, 207. I think it was 3 Thursdays ago when things were really hitting the fan. Not a big position, but I did feel like AMD going from 250 to 197 at the time was kind of stupid. And so I bought it at 207, 208. But I am confused that they're giving up 20% of their company to 2 different companies just to be able to get these deals in. I mean, theoretically, they shouldn't have to give up shit. They're the ones with the chips, and Meta's the one who needs it. OpenAI is the one who needs it. So I understand the strategic issuance of equity here, especially because the equity is tied to a vesting schedule based on specific milestones that AMD has to achieve. But it is kind of weird that 2 different companies are going to now own 20% of AMD. Now, having said that, if Lisa Su thinks this is the, Nvidia is about to do 70 billion in revenue, AMD is not doing 70 billion a quarter, right? So it's obviously harder for AMD's multiple to be justified in that multi-trillion-dollar range. If she thinks this is the way to guarantee revenue, and then from that guaranteed revenue, they can then guarantee ownership of their stock because they have customers that are going to be with them for the next 5-10 years to be able to engage in this multi-year strategic partnership around multiple gigawatts. In this case, it would be 12 gigawatts of energy they'd be deploying against OpenAI and Meta. And maybe that's the only way to get to that valuation. Then it's obviously the right thing to do for shareholders. But it also is confusing. And to me, it's a little fishy. And I kind of think they're signing this deal with Meta because they know Meta is good for the money. OpenAI should be good for the money because they're about to raise $130 billion. But if OpenAI is not good for the money, then at least they'll have the same type of deal with a Meta instead of an AMD. And I think maybe that's the way that it's playing out. Maybe in Lisa Su's view, she wants to create a partnership with these big brands, kind of guarantee that they can trust each other and work open source. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is helpful to have a partnership with the largest hyperscalers in the world and to have these multi-year agreements. It's just giving up that much equity of the company. I mean, this deal is like a copy and paste from OpenAI. Like, when I read it this morning, I was like, this is literally the exact number of warrants are the same for share equity. And I think Zucks came up to her and was like, hey, can we get the same deal OpenAI got? We'll give you whatever money you want for it as well, if you guys can give us the compute. Obviously, Zucks, has the CapEx ready to allocate. And it seems like Lisa Su agreed to that. Regardless, AMD is up 10%. At the end of the day, the job of the CEO is to get that stock to go up. This stock is pumping right here. We're going to see if it can actually hold into its momentum when the market opens. I mean, this is one of those deals that guarantees almost 70 to 80 billion dollars of revenue over the next 5 years for AMD. Lisa Su did guarantee that they would be able to CAGR at 35% over the next 5 years. These deals are probably a part of getting there. And realistically, if they have to give up 20% of the company in 2033 and the stock's worth $1 trillion, I mean, no one's going to care, right? If you bought it at 200 and it's worth 600, even if Meta and OpenAI own 10% of it, as a shareholder, you'd probably be happy. So I think it's the right deal. It's just very surprising that they went with this deal again, and it's almost the exact same deal as OpenAI, which means I think to an extent they're hedging their OpenAI exposure by giving the same type of deal to Meta. So that's what you got. That's the first big deal of the day. AMD up 10% on a partnership with Meta. The State of the Union is going to be today. I will be live at 9 p.m. Steve might be live with me. So 9 p.m. we will be streaming this. It's probably going to start at like 9:30, to be honest, or 9:45. But we will be live, and yeah, I think it's gonna be must-see TV. You got the Supreme Court justices in the front of Congress. Trump has had no problem saying they're a disgrace to America. Literally in every tweet, he is now lowercasing the S and the C of Supreme Court to show how much disdain he has for the courts. I mean, it's gonna be funny, I feel like. So yeah, we'll be streaming it live. We'll see what he has to say. And, in State of the Union, you have to outline how you're going to govern over the next few years. And, we'll see after this tariff decision what Trump's going to say, but we'll be live and we'll see what ends up happening. Is this bullish for Nvidia? Yeah, Nvidia did sell off immediately when this news came out. It went to like 189. Now it's rebounding here to about 190. I don't think this is just like Nvidia slightly selling off here is stupid. It was also stupid for AMD to sell off when Nvidia announced the same deal with Meta. Not the exact same deal, but a similar sort of strategic partnership. Meta needs a lot of compute, and AMD and NVIDIA are going to be the largest people to get the share of the compute, not only from Meta, but from the other hyperscalers. So I don't think this is bearish for any of them. I think if you're bullish on the overall compute trajectory, AI trajectory, you have to be bullish AMD and NVIDIA. That doesn't mean you have to own them, but it's hard to be bearish on them. And so, yeah, I think this is good for everybody. It's just the structure of this deal to me is interesting. But, you know, I'd rather have Meta owning 10% of AMD than OpenAI owning 10% of AMD. Like, it just feels like that would be more strategic. And so maybe that's the reason they went with this deal as well for Zucks. All right, so that's what we got with AMD, and that's what we got with Meta. Let's get into what happened yesterday, do a quick summary about that, and then we'll get into some of the headlines this morning. So yesterday, Home Depot had earnings today. I didn't even check that. Let's actually do that real quick before we get into anything else. Home Depot, they beat by 8% on EPS. They beat by less than 1% on revenue. Are we up on Home Depot? We are up 4%. Okay. Nice to see. Home Depot right there, 272 versus 252 expected on EPS. Revenue 38.1 versus 38.1 billion. Cypher had earnings. Cypher is also up. They missed pretty badly. I'm assuming there's some accounting stuff going on here. They missed by 1,800%. That might have to do with their Bitcoin as well. Cypher is up 3% in the pre-markets. Revenue missed by 30%, even though revenue's up 41% year over year. EPS is down 3,920%, and they missed by 1,800%. Again, these Bitcoin miners / AI HPC plays, there's a lot of different weird accounting stuff, but that stock is up 3%. We had DigitalOcean. They beat by 16% on EPS, beat by 2% on revenue. DOCN is the ticker. That stock is flat pre-market, and those are the major earnings that we had. DigitalOcean, Cypher, and Home Depot. After the bell today, we will have a lot. We have Zeta, we have Mercado Libre, we have Navitas, we have Kava, we have First Solar, we have Axon, we have HP, we have Workday, big for the software names. We have Transmedics, we have Tempest, we have Lucid, Accelera, GoDaddy. Lots and lots and lots of earnings today. We will also have Technical Tuesday, so we will spend about 30 minutes on the earnings, and then we will get deeper into the technicals, but definitely a ton of stuff to look at. I'm just seeing Bitcoin for the first time this morning. When did we get to 62? When did this happen? I literally have not looked at Bitcoin at least for the past 24 hours. Wow. So we are $2,000 away, folks, from those 60 lows, which would be ugly to see again. But I guess we'll see if we have a chance to get there. 62,912 on Bitcoin. Russian Foreign Ministry issues statement warning of risks of a direct clash between nuclear powers and its consequences. Russian Foreign Ministry says any steps to assist Kyiv in getting a nuclear weapon will be met with a harsh response. Wow, why is Russia Putin's aid? Russia will inform U.S. about potential appearance of nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Wow. So Russian intelligence is telling the foreign ministry that they are worried about Ukraine having a nuclear weapon. Kyiv's attempt to obtain nuclear weapons will affect Russia's position on Ukraine. I have not seen anything suggesting that Ukraine is getting a nuclear weapon unless the United States or European allies have been secretly trying to get a nuke into Ukraine. That would be kind of crazy. Obviously, Russia would not be happy about that. Yeah, that would be aggressive. We'll keep updated on that story. We're getting those quotes right now from the Russian Foreign Ministry. If they think they have intelligence that says Ukraine has a nuke, I mean, any chance of them actually coming to a compromise to end this war is not happening. So, I mean, they could also be lying as well. You know, lots of propaganda comes out of Russia. So we'll keep updated on those statements, but those are the official statements from the Russian Foreign Ministry. Okay, so let's talk about what happened yesterday. The Citrini article. So I made a video on it. We talked about it a lot on the market open, market close. Again, AMD up 10% on that partnership with Meta. That Citrini article really sent a ton of headwinds across the entire AI sector. Saas yesterday absolutely took it on the chin. I mean, at some point it got comical to see how bad Saas got hit. But as you can see right here on the screen, I mean, it got ugly. It got really ugly across the board. Microsoft was down 4%. AppLovin was down 10%. Twilio, Dropbox, Salesforce, all these names just got hit very, very strongly. It got to the point where by the end of the day, it was almost 30 minutes before the market closed, Anthropic announced that Claude can streamline COBOL code, which, by the way, I got into a rabbit hole of learning about what the hell COBOL code was, and I spent like 30 minutes last night. I can't believe there are millions and millions of lines of COBOL code that are created every week because legacy mainframe systems on particular banks are still stuck in this programming language from like the 80s. and and like COBOL code programmers are some of the highest paid programmers in the world because like no one can code this shit. I didn't realize it was that big of a deal, but apparently it is. IBM is intertwined with COBOL, as the company was a key contributor to it years ago. IBM was down 14% yesterday because Anthropic came out and said they announced Claude can streamline COBOL coding, which seems to be actually very, very effective and efficient for productivity gains because, again, COBOL is such a legacy programming system that it was incredible for Anthropic to be like, yep, we're going after this as well. And then IBM had its worst drop since the year 2000. So Jason did call an IBM short. I don't think he thought it was short because of Anthropic. I think he had other reasons for why he was short IBM, but I was texting with him yesterday. He was like, well, that worked. And that did indeed work. IBM right there up about 2% in the pre-market. But it is quite incredible to see Anthropic go after all these different sectors. So you had not only Anthropic hit Saas, you had Anthropic hit FinTech because that Citrini article talked about stablecoins being the replacement for all of these intermediaries that are within the banking space. And then you also had them go after companies like DoorDash or Uber Eats, as the argument is that DoorDash is just another intermediary between the consumer and the aggregator of demand. Now, there's a lot of pushback against this argument because DoorDash has something called network effect, and a network effect is not necessarily easy to build. But that's what the article suggested. And because of the article's suggestion of that and the article being taken seriously, getting almost 30, 40 million views, that's why those stocks sold off. And I think that's some of the pain that we had to deal with yesterday. Anthropic is going live today. Anthropic is going live on YouTube at the open at 9:30. Okay. Lisa Su is also going to be live at 9:30. So in the next 20 minutes, I will try to see what all the headlines are. I mean, is Anthropic getting ready to kill the next industry? It is becoming laughable at this point, but it seems like that's what's happening. And I guess every other day they're getting ready to announce a new industry that they're going. I just want to hear a quick clip right here from the co-author of that Citrini report, because I thought this was interesting, where he's talking about, all these different intermediaries that they feel can get wrecked because of AI. And, the market is taking that claim rather seriously here.
That was sort of the opening shot. What other sectors do you think could be the next victims here? I know you lay out a whole list of them, but what are the ones that we really need to focus on? And maybe what are some of the sectors that are best positioned in this whole AI scare trade?
Other sectors that I think we think have real risk are just generally intermediation sectors. And so DoorDash is an intermediary. It runs a marketplace for food, Uber for cars. But I think where the markets are just beginning to sniff things out is most of financial services is ultimately intermediation. Insurance companies are intermediating risk. Banks ultimately, when it comes to their credit card businesses, as well as their lending and sort of deposit businesses, are an intermediary as well. And so the real basis of this thought exercise was just thinking, hey, imagine it's 2 years from today, and most of the things that you do on your phone, instead now your agent does for you. So instead of having to open up the Chase app and go into Zelle and send a payment, you just simply speak to your phone, hey, send a payment to my friend. In that world, you are a lot less tied to the UI of the Chase app and your bank branch and everything else, instead of just, hey, whatever gets it done most easily and ultimately most cheaply. And so right now, the high level thesis of all these intermediation businesses for us is that they are generating great returns because the customer wants one relationship, maybe two relationships. They're comfortable with that brand. They're comfortable with the UI. They're comfortable with their locations. And so they just stay with them. But in a world where you have an agent and the agent's job is to just look for better prices for things all day, every day, it's going to do a good job of finding you alternatives where you don't really feel the friction of moving from Chase to Citi because it's doing all the work for you. And similarly, like if you think about in financial advisors, right now it's really hard to move your money from one financial advisor to even an ETF, right? You've got to open these accounts, you've got to make all these transfers, you got to do all this research. If the AI comes to you and just says, hey, you're spending 1.25% a year with an advisor at Raymond James, and instead you can get essentially the same return minus those fees with this ETF, it will be, for some folks, it might be a lot more compelling to make those changes.
So that is the argument that tanked the market yesterday. And as you can see right there on the screen, you had DoorDash, American Express, Apollo Management, IBM, obviously all the SaaS names, fintech names get hit. The sort of premise of what happened yesterday was this article, which again went very viral. And again, the market going down on the article's claims was less interesting to me. The broader AI anxiety that the article produced and the ability for it to produce that anxiety, which I think was what really caused the sell-off yesterday, is what's more exciting to just analyze, because we are so on tilt, especially hedge funds, money managers, et cetera, that even a thought piece around a prediction on what could theoretically happen was enough to sell off the markets. And explicitly, it was that article, because the stocks that they mentioned, which by the way, the guy, he was asked, hey, were you short any of these names? And he said yes. Like, so, I mean, like, they definitely probably didn't know that article would go that viral, but they were prepared for the article to go viral because they had shorts on all the names they mentioned. He explicitly admitted that in the interview. And so they took advantage of it. But the fact that it went viral was so interesting to me, simply because of the fact that we have this much anxiety around AI. Now, the biggest argument that they made was that AI agents are going to get so good at everything that it's going to take away the need for a consumer to interact with an end product. And if the consumer, AKA you, don't need to order from DoorDash or Uber Eats, but you tell your agent to order your Chinese food, and then the agent figures out how to go through either the intermediary platforms or directly to the restaurant or through whatever new agent protocol is there to deliver food, which again sounds kind of crazy because DoorDash is and Uber Eats are, massive network effect businesses. You don't just replicate that overnight. But if there is a world in which the growth of those businesses stops because the agents get rid of the intermediary, well, that's their thesis for why AI becomes so good. And then think about the gig economy with DoorDash and Uber Eats. There's so many jobs that at that point kind of go belly up. And you extend that to its logical extreme across every single sector, yeah, you get a doomsday scenario pretty quickly. I don't know if that's actually going to play out. I'm a bit skeptical on that, but the fact that the market thinks there's a chance for it to play out, I mean, again, CrowdStrike fell 10% yesterday on the idea that Claude is going to be more in focus around security measures, is the state of the markets that we're in right now. And the only kind of remorse from the article is that you have to be long AI names like an Nvda, like an AMD, to get the incremental dollar of every revenue that's being spent on AI, but you can't be long the application layer names like a DoorDash or a CrowdStrike or a Salesforce, because those are going to get commoditized away. Yeah, PayPal's going to get vibe code away. By the way, there's no update on the PayPal acquisition. That stock now falling in the pre-market. I don't want to say the rumor yesterday was fake, but we've seen rumors be fake about acquisitions many times to get a stock to pump. There is zero details on this PayPal buyout. So if you're buying it for the buyout, you got to be weary on if that news ever comes. I mean, it makes sense for PayPal to get bought out, but I also don't think the shareholders want to get sold at 40 billion market. I think they would want at least 60. I don't think a buyer would want to pay 60 billion, but we're going to have to see if that news actually comes to fruition. So that's what happened yesterday. That's what created the pain in the market. I wonder if day 2 of this week will be similar to Monday. I mean, the market had a hissy fit. It took AppLovin down 10%, took Microsoft down 4%, took Zeta down 7%, took SoFi down 4%. Did we get that over with? Did we wake up the next day and are we ready to just be big boys and not think that all these companies are going to die because of Anthropic? Or are we going back down? My gut, we'll do the poll, red or green in the chat, tells me that a lot of the selling yesterday hopefully is done, at least in the short term, and you're not going to get another tsunami of red simply because of vibe coding. But if that happens again today, then this is just the nature of the market we're in. And I guess it's the market that we have to all deal with. Green or red today? Let's put this in the chat. Apple to move some Mac Mini production to Houston, according to operating chief Khan. All right, so you're seeing a lot of Mac Mini demand, particularly because of OpenClaw and the ability to run OpenClaw on Mac Mini. In fact, someone asked Andre Karpathy, which for those that don't know, he's a massive figure in AI, why he hasn't tweeted in 4 days. And he last tweeted on February 20th when he said, I bought a new Mac Mini to properly try to run OpenClaw and see what's going on. He responded, actually, I've had huge success over the weekend. I just wanted to write it up a bit, but didn't get enough time to finish that. Many people's reaction was, why would you need so much compute like a Mac Mini? But I found it's not enough compute, even after adding my DJX Spark to the home compute fabric. We're going to need a lot more compute where we're going. Again, one of the smartest guys in AI. Now, Andre Karpathy has a little bit of a different perspective than Sam Altman and some of the other foundation model CEOs around the scaling laws of LLMs. That's, you know, where he has some disagreements there. But in terms of just raw compute that's needed to be able to usher in this agentic universe, again, the argument is we're going to need a lot more compute where we're going. And if that's the case, and NVIDIA kind of continues to signal that's the case, AMD signaled that's the case with this Meta deal. For those that are just joining, Meta will be spending billions on AMD over the next 5 years. That is why that stock is up, and that is why hopefully NVIDIA can do well as we get into their earnings. There is a headline you guys are going to see today. JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon said he's starting to see parallels to the era before the 2008 financial crisis. Jamie Dimon every year finds a way to compare the current year to 2008. He did that in 22, 23, 24, 25. He's obviously going to do it right now in 26. I would hope we're not near the 2008 crisis, but you know, Jamie Dimon historically has tried to compare. Jamie Dimon was actually a pivotal figure. If you guys watch some documentaries on 2008, he was not like the big shot that he is today, but he was important in helping the entire U.S. government navigate and helping Ben Bernanke deal with the crisis. But yeah, I mean, every year he finds a way to compare to 2008. Last thing right here on the article, I do want to share this right here. This is a comment from someone who works in big tech, and this was their response to the Citrini article as well. I work in big tech in one of the Max 7 in the cloud and AI division. I've generally found Citrini's understanding of AI and its capabilities poor. What AI can do in software engineering, useful as it is proving, is nowhere near the current hype. Why this is not a much longer discussion, and it should be noted that nowhere near the current hype is still not nothing. However, one thing that has become apparent from all this is that a lot of investors and management are working off very simplistic models of how things work and genuinely seem to think AI is magic. And something I genuinely do find interesting and valuable in the piece is the idea that it doesn't really matter if it's feasible or not to implement the systems a SaaS is providing you, as long as you can persuade the salesperson that you genuinely think you can, even if it would be a devastatingly bad decision for you. It's a lost sale, and that's a strong negotiating chip. So he goes on to say, I do think there is a lot of toxicity within SaaS, and you probably don't need that many salespeople. The margins probably don't need to be that high. There's probably a lot of middlemen you can get rid of. But the idea that AI is just going to change everything immediately, and investors are just assuming like, yeah, AI is commoditizing it. You had someone, and I'm sure a lot of people in the chat that work in software engineering and big tech probably agree, like it's probably not happening overnight, and it's definitely not happening at the magnitude by which the market is discounting a lot of these stocks. Now, the market is forward-looking, so the market's going to be the market. But I mean, at the end of the day, if it's not literally replacing everything overnight, if you can't vibe code your CRM immediately, or reasonably in the next couple of years, just because of the bureaucracy, the contracts, the lock-in effect, et cetera, then maybe that's not happening tomorrow. But the fact that it is happening, and the projection of that happening, is one of those reasons for why the market could be pricing that in. Rocket Lab, that is down 1% in the pre-market. We do have a headline here on Rocket Lab. For those that want Rocket Lab news, I would highly recommend following Ace Crouton on X. I'll put his link right here in the chat. He is definitely someone to follow when it comes to Rocket Lab news. Mars end-to-end communication service architecture studies to advance end-to-end communication solutions for Mars exploration, identifying performance needs and commercial service opportunities. This is a $390,000 contract, not a lot of money, but I think the extent of the contract is, or the quality of what the contract is implying, matters more than the money. Again, this is from NASA as the contracting office. End-to-end communication service architecture to study Mars. Pretty cool. We do have Rocket Lab earnings on Thursday. I'm sure Sir Peter Beck will probably be referencing a lot of the different things they're working on. Obviously, Neutron is the next major big catalyst, but Elon kind of, he didn't say he's given up on Mars, but Elon did say that a self-sustaining planet on the moon would be more important than focusing on Mars. Maybe that's where Rocket Lab can step in and say, all right, we're going to focus on Mars if, Elon's focusing on the moon. And maybe that's how it plays out. But space continues to be a broad theme. Again, Rocket Lab down a lot from the highs, but Rocket Lab has held the 65 to 70 level pretty well, and hopefully can continue to maintain that level. ASTS actually was up yesterday, 8390. They also got another contract. That stock slightly down the pre-market, but it was up about 4% for ASTS. Intuit, okay, so I believe Intuit signed a deal with Anthropic, if I'm not wrong. Intuit and Anthropic, do they have a deal together? Intuit's up 5% right here. Intuit really needed a boost, and it looks like maybe you're getting that today. Intuit has a multi-year partnership with Anthropic. This is the CEO that just tweeted. Okay, let's see what's the exact partnership. Intuit and Anthropic partner to bring trusted financial intelligence and custom AI agents to customers and businesses. Okay, so this is going to be really interesting to see what happens with the market, because the market has felt that Anthropic will commoditize something like TurboTax, and you won't need to go through Intuit to be able to do your taxes because an AI agent will do it for you. This press release is the opposite. Intuit and Anthropic partner to bring financial intelligence and custom AI agents to consumers and businesses. Intuit will bring trusted and accurate tax, financing, and accounting and marketing expense directly from Claude and Cowork users. Intuit will deploy Claude Code across its engineering organization to further accelerate development. This should be what Jensen has talked about, which is that the software companies will ultimately leverage AI versus be replaced from it. Why would Anthropic partner with Intuit if Anthropic will replace it? It's a good question. Probably pushes back against the software sell-off. Having said that, I mean, the cynic in me says that Anthropic is going to partner with them to learn everything they can, and then they're going to cut them out in a year. But like, if you're not that cynical, yeah, this shouldn't be as bad as people think it is. This is a groundbreaking partnership with Anthropic. We're bringing the power of Intuit's platform to unlock rivaled benefits that are customized to specific needs of consumers and businesses by combining Intuit's proprietary data, which honestly is the only moat that a lot of these companies have at this point, and domain-specific services with AI models built to support security, accuracy, and compliance, and Claude's powerful capabilities. We're delivering something customers haven't had before: custom AI agents that truly understand their finances, their workflow, and their industry, and can take action on their behalf. You know, it's interesting, right? Because what happens when you just upload your custom data, that proprietary knowledge of yourself, which is what Intuit is saying, hey, this is the proprietary moat that we have, right into Claude? And I think that's what the market is scared about. Like, if the market thinks that you never have to go to TurboTax, you can just literally pull up your Claude app that you're paying $20 a month for and upload all your income and expenses and taxes and prompt it to give you the best loopholes that you can use, yada, yada, then maybe you never have to go through Intuit to have access to those agents. Now, for the people that are on Intuit and have been on Intuit for the past 5 years, obviously it's a lot more smoother to just log into your portal and then have Anthropic be embedded into the system, and Intuit still survives at that point. But I think that is the disintermediation effect that Citrini was talking about. What happens when you don't need to? And if that's the case, you know, that could be broader issues for Intuit and these software names. All right, so that's what we have on that partnership. Waymo headline starting today. We're welcoming our first riders in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Orlando. Waymo also passed 200 million miles yesterday. So Waymo continues to expand. Tesla did fall below 400, unfortunately. Tesla, I could see that getting a rebound easily today with the rest of the market. It's basically almost there, 398 right there in the pre-market. It did gap up from 394 to 399 at the very end of the day, but still below 400 right here. Student loan delinquencies are at 16.3%, now at all-time high. That's from Bloomberg. That matches the auto loan delinquency rates that we've seen, along with credit card rates that are at 11.2%. Obviously, delinquencies are not the best. This is also why when the Fed talks about not cutting rates, rate probabilities are now down to 4.1%. It is confusing, to say the least, but hopefully we end up getting that rate cut sooner than later. Here's another macro stat. Let's transition to some of the macro, and we'll get into some of this conversation. What do you think is happening with BMNR and ETH? So BMNR did buy another 40,000 ETH over the weekend, or over last week, I should say. I mean, outside of crypto getting hit, Ethereum right there, 1815, and BTC, there is not much going on in the crypto universe. I mean, right now, I think the most important thing for crypto is, do we violate the lows that we hit from 3 weeks ago, which is 60,200 on Bitcoin? I think on ETH, what is it? It's 1750. So, I mean, those are the levels to watch. Unfortunately, it looks like HOOD wants to go below 70. It's holding on for dear life at 70.90. SoFi, although it's not a crypto name, this one has got hit with all the fintechs, is down to $18 in the pre-market. MicroStrategy, Coinbase, I mean, all these names have just absolutely been wrecked. And until we get any reversal on Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think they probably stay stuck. Now, the question here is, you know, I asked you guys yesterday, where do you think the lowest it can go? My guess is 50K. A lot of people say 45 to 50. If we lose 60 and we head into the 50s with a 5 handle, you know, I mean, at that point, we're already in a bear market for crypto, but now we are like in a legit bear market. So I guess they will be important in the next 20 minutes. We'll see if that actually does happen. But unfortunately, Bitcoin is not in the best place. And obviously, a lot of that money has gone to gold and silver. Now, the other thing about Bitcoin is that the institutional flows, although gold and silver are down in the pre-market, have stopped dramatically. I mean, like the outflows on Bitcoin is ugly. It's I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars per day, as you can see right here, that are being extracted from the ETF. So unfortunately, the ETFs aren't supporting it. Michael Saylor can't buy enough. Algos are selling it off. You got OG crypto whales selling from 2010. It's just in a mess right now. And obviously all the proxy names towards it are also in a mess. Gold right there down about 1%, and then silver down about 0.5% as well. Will Trump create a Bitcoin reserve tonight? I don't think so. I think he's got some other stuff to worry about. It would be nice. But, that's the worst. I was talking to someone yesterday. That's the worst thing about this. Everyone who voted for Trump thought it was going to be, a crypto bull market. He's the most crypto-friendly president we ever had. And it's turned out to be a crypto bear market. And part of the stuff he said he was going to do, like Bitcoin reserve, that didn't happen. It was a flat-out lie. It didn't take place. So it sucks, but this is the nature of the market that we are in right now for BTC. All right, so here's a macro chart that I thought was really interesting. We'll go through a couple of them. More than 60% of S&P 500 stocks are currently beating the index. This came out from the Financial Times yesterday. This is crazy because a lot of the high beta growth stocks that were massive winners last year are massive losers year to date going into the end of February. And the reason the S&P 500 is basically flat this year, and when you look at a chart of the S&P 500 versus looking at some of the stocks that comprise the majority of it, seeing the S&P basically do nothing all year, but seeing 60% of the S&P 500 stocks that are beating the index just goes to show there has been a rotation. There's absolutely been a rotation. Yes, the other 40% are dragging the spy because the other 40%, unfortunately, are what comprises actually 40% of the S&P 500, which is the Mag 7. So the Mag 7 are not beating the S&P 500, although I think Nvda is slightly beating it by like a percentage point. But when Microsoft's in a bear market to start Microsoft's down. That's another reason Bitcoin's not going to pump. It's like, it's not that easy for a Mag 7 that's as important as Microsoft to be down 20% for the year and another risk-on asset like Bitcoin to be going to the moon. Like usually Bitcoin tends to follow the NASDAQ, and at least from a risk-on, risk to reward equity risk premium argument. And Microsoft has absolutely crapped the bed this year, and it's going to be hard for people to take that much risk if they're not even willing to buy Microsoft. So from that perspective, it is wild to see. But again, this is the current macro we're in. I don't know if things are going to change with Trump's tariffs as they become more official. But the market seems to be pricing in a variety of different scenarios. And one of those is that these big tech names get hit. White House official says Trump administration is working to change new temporary U.S. tariff rate to 15% from 10% published by Customs and Border Protection. Again, it's still 10% right now. It has not gone to 15%, although the administration has been saying we'll do 15%. So until we get that official order of 15, it is still at 10%. By the way, Trump did put out an executive order yesterday eliminating the use of the IEEPA tariffs. So all of those trade deals that were negotiated based on those IEEPA tariffs are now null and void. They have been replaced with that 10% tariff, and Trump is trying to get it to be the 15% tariff. But they're gone. Those IEEPA tariffs are officially gone, and we are in a new world in regards to kind of how we're going to navigate tariffs. What do you think is going on with Palantir? Okay, so I've heard a lot of questions of people being afraid of Palantir's moat in regards to AI. Palantir right there down about 1.62%. Two things on this. I think it's very, very important to understand what Palantir is actually doing for enterprises. I do not think Palantir is in the same bucket as a CRM. If you've ever invested in Palantir thinking it was going to, just build a customer relationship management tool, then you have to have a different understanding of the business in the first place. So I personally think that Palantir is the one that Anthropic and OpenAI are going after. In fact, we have some proof of that. We talked about OpenAI's Frontier, which is their new version of essentially, I think, a Palantir ontology, to the point where they're literally talking about we will send forward deployed engineers, if that sounds familiar or not, to help your enterprise run your teams. I think Palantir is actually setting the standard of how you implement AI in the enterprise. I think the orchestration level of how to make AI valuable is something that is not easily commoditized. Will it be competitive from Anthropic and OpenAI going after? Of course, right? Like everyone's going to try to compete for the multi-trillions of dollars that are stuck in the enterprise. But I think Palantir is actually the most ready for the sort of AI commoditization narrative, because the implementation of AI is exactly what Palantir has been doing for the past couple of years from now. Having said that, it's a SaaS name. And because it's a SaaS name, it is in the same SaaS bucket. Again, I don't think CrowdStrike should be falling 10, 15%, but it's a SaaS stock. And because it's a SaaS stock and it's in that bucket, the algos are going to take it down. Palantir is the second largest holding under IGV, which is the largest software ETF, which is slightly up a little bit in the pre-market. It hit a 52-week low yesterday. at 76.94. It's basically at its 2020 lows, which is kind of crazy. Microsoft is the first. So if Microsoft and Palantir are the top two holdings, and the market wants to take down software, then the market is going to take down software. Do you think Palantir needs its own model? No. I don't think building a model is the solution to any of these AI SaaS fears. I think defending the initial moat that you came to market with is what matters. And, the reason DoorDash is down 6% is because there's a compelling argument, at least from the Citrini article, that DoorDash doesn't have a moat, that AI agents will just find the lowest cost of food and the lowest delivery cost. They will be so intelligent that they will be able to figure out how to get you your food without having to pay 25% to DoorDash. Now, again, the bulls of DoorDash would push back against that and say, dude, DoorDash has spent 15 years building a sophisticated network of millions of drivers and restaurants. That's kind of like the traditional Silicon Valley network effect marketplace businesses. It's not easy to build those. In a world of AI, maybe you don't need them, which again, I don't think you do, but that's the argument. And so I don't think it's about building a model. It's also too expensive for any company to build a model. OpenAI and Anthropic are spending more than enough money on it. It's about defending your moat. And I think some of these software companies are struggling to communicate that they can defend their moat. Amazon, new $12 billion data center. Is that correct? I think so. We continue to see new spend from the hyperscalers. Yep, Amazon, $12 billion in Louisiana, announced today. Look at that. This is the first January we had a $50 billion, I think like 8-year deal for the DMV area. Today, Amazon plans to build 3 data center campuses in Northwest Louisiana, creating more than 500 new jobs. $12 billion will be the investment. Okay, that's what you got. Decent for Amazon. Amazon stock right there. 205. That was announced yesterday. Okay, I'm seeing it right now. I'm seeing the headlines come through my screen right now. Maybe it was put on their website yesterday, but you're seeing the business networks pick up the headline this morning. All right, so the market's opening in about 1 minute. The main thing that we have to look at, I think, is, well, 2 things. Number one, can AMD hold the pump? Intuit's already losing a lot of the pump. It was up 5%. Now it's up 2%. AMD, put in the chat right now. We got 30 seconds. What do you think? Do we hold the pump or not on AMD? It was at 227. Now it's at 212. Does this thing go back to 200? And does the market discount ultimately this partnership with Meta, which is very similar to OpenAI in terms of giving up 10% of the company? And then number 2, does the Saas sell-off continue? Does the Saas sell-off continue? Those are the 2 things we're watching out today. I think Lisa Su is going to be live in about 5 minutes as well. So I will switch from looking at the market open to Lisa Su, see what she has to say about it. But those are the 2 things we're looking about today, and we'll see how this market ends up playing out. Tuesday, February 24th. Thank you, everybody, for being here. The stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. AMD. She's trying to hold the pump to 11. That's up 7.63%. Let's see if we can actually hold on to it. AMD right there, 210, starting to go red. Palantir goes red. Coinbase goes red. Robinhood, it looks like she's going to give up 70, guys. It looks like she's going to give up 70. 70.3, that's down 2%. Tesla, 401. Tesla at least opens up above 400. Intuit barely holding on to any pump. It was up 5. Now it's up 1. So that one is not holding on. Rocket Lab, that's down 2.85%. PayPal, that's down 1%. Nvda, that is flat on the day. Nvda looks like it's about to go green. CrowdStrike, that goes slightly green on the day. IBM up a little bit after its worst day since the year 2000. 14% down yesterday on an Anthropic headline. Oracle, that's down 0.3%. AppLovin again takes a hit. I don't know how much growth this company needs to show Wall Street, but it's not enough. AppLovin down another 2%. Shopify is down another 0.5%. Nebius is down 1.4%. SanDisk memory continues to go higher. I think SK Hynix, if I'm not wrong, hit a new all-time high in their stock price yesterday. Yeah, they hit 1 million Korean won. They were up 5.68% yesterday. EWI, which is exposure to South Korea, is up 3%. That's at an all-time high. You know what's so funny about this? The funniest thing about this is the South Koreans are some of the biggest investors in like these really super big high beta names. There's this channel on YouTube where the guy literally talks about IONQ every single day, and he's from South Korea. The irony is the South Koreans could have bought their own index at the start of the year and be up 40%. IONQ is obviously not up 40% this year. So it's kind of crazy how well South Korea has done, but also South Korea has a lot of those investors that are willing to take risks on a Palantir or a Tesla, for example. I think Palantir is in the top 5 stocks in that country that's been traded. Their own index is up 40% this year, which is quite incredible. Robinhood loses 70. There it is. It was happening. I think we knew it was going to happen. It was on a slow trajectory down over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, Bitcoin making a new low today, or very close to a new low for this year, not helping Robinhood. HIMS had a really weird report. This stock down 10%. Growth slowed down, or is going to slow down from 60% to 22%, which to me is a pretty massive reduction in growth. And I understand a company can't grow 60% forever, but that's pretty aggressive for their fiscal year guidance. And second of all, they only added 40,000 subscribers, which is just 2% growth in subs quarter over quarter. It's the lowest amount of subscriber growth, which the entire thesis of HIMS is that they get subscribers, they're sticky, that they can monetize them over the long term. If you don't have the subscribers and the growth is not there, then like, what's the point of the business? Having said that, I mean, they did 2.35 billion in revenue. The stock is worth 3.1 billion. So it's trading at a price of sales of 1.4. But the narrative around Novo and obviously the lack of growth is definitely, hurting the market right here. So HIMS down 10.3%. That's going to get Palo Alto goes red. SPY goes red. Bloom Energy, this was up yesterday. That went red. SanDisk still holding on to 1.3% of a move. Again, the South Korean index doing well. Micron probably holding on. And these memory names, yeah, Micron right there up a little bit, getting more momentum. Celsius down 0.5%. Silver just went red. Silver was green in the morning, or slightly green in the morning. Then it came down. Is Google tanking? Google is red. 1.3. Is Nvidia below 190? Nvidia is, there you go, below 190. What about AMD? Are we at least holding on? It's the lowest it's been since the pump in the pre-market. 208 right there on AMD. I mean, it definitely deserves some moves today. Let's see if it can actually hold on to anything. DoorDash getting a little recovery. Amazon potentially below 200. Broadcom dumping. Wow, Broadcom down 4 is a little weird. The reason Broadcom's probably dumping is because of the Meta AMD partnership. But just because Meta's paying AMD doesn't mean Broadcom's custom ASICs, won't have a customer to sell to. So I think it's kind of weird. The market's selling that off, but nonetheless, all the semis are kind of getting sold off except Nvidia right here. Nike is going green. Red Cat's down 4. No, if the market's thinking there's no need for TPUs, I mean, we already know how much Google is getting ready to get their supply chain for more and more demand for TPUs. So, I mean, maybe the market thinks that if Meta should have signed a deal like this with Google instead of AMD, and that would be really good for Broadcom, but I doubt that means that TPU demand itself has fallen off a cliff. Palantir right there, that's down 2.5. Coinbase down 3. MicroStrategy down 4. Robinhood down 3. SoFi down 0.5%. ASML, is this moving? ASML is down 0.5% as well. Let's see if Lisa Su is live. She's not live yet. She's about to be. Then we'll transition over to her. How about Ford? Is Ford green? Yo, I saw a stat on Ford yesterday. Ford has less CapEx than the Mag 7, which if you think about Ford and how much money they spent to set up their auto plants, I mean, it's kind of crazy. But Ford has less CapEx than the Mag 7. Ford right there up 4%. There has to be some headline today giving it some love. This might be part of the reason. They have less CapEx, and the market likes that more than anything. Fed's Lisa Cook says AI transition could have profound implications for monetary policy, but it is too early to know the details. You had another Fed speaker. A lot of them are going to be speaking today. That said, what was his name? Goolsbee said it's too early to think about rate cuts because we don't have enough data on inflation yet. So once again, they are looking for more data before they can even think of announcing any level of meaningful path to rate cuts. Microsoft and Tesla announced a new collaboration with Starlink. Microsoft low Earth orbit satellite connectivity with community-based deployment models, local ecosystem partnerships. I should say Microsoft and Starlink, not Microsoft and Tesla, but maybe, or I should say Microsoft and SpaceX, but maybe SpaceX will be with Tesla one day. Microsoft stock, that is down 383. 383. Nvidia now down 2%. I actually like it dumping before earnings, to be honest. But AMD actually going up. AMD hitting 211. So, all right. So market's rotating here. They're giving AMD some love today. They're taking Nvidia down, which, last week it was Nvidia getting the love, AMD going down. So it's going back and forth. But you are seeing the reversal right there. Citron is short SanDisk. Wow. Holy. Are they short? Wow. Right now, 1 minute ago, Citron goes short SanDisk. We don't need Anthropic to announce they're making NAND. Samsung is already the 800-pound gorilla, and they've been running this playbook for 30 years. The market is pricing SanDisk like it's NVIDIA. There's one problem. NVIDIA has a moat. SanDisk sells a commodity. We've seen this movie before in 2008, 2012, 2018. It's never different this time. Memory is a cycle, and cycles peak. Shorting SanDisk is skating to where the puck is going. By the time the cycle normalizes, the stock will already be much lower. Wow. I mean, to be honest, I think they'll be right about this in the long term. I think in the short term, SanDisk is going to rip off faces. I'm too scared to buy them, even though I think that's going to happen because there's a good chance it doesn't happen. But there you go. SanDisk goes red. Citron officially short SanDisk. And that one is now good. Yeah, they are absolutely calling the top. They are absolutely calling the top right here on SanDisk. I mean, look, the short thesis is what everyone's been saying, right? That it's a commodity. NVIDIA has a moat. SanDisk, Micron, SK Hynix, Samsung, these companies don't have moats. But they are in demand for memory, and that's why the market is giving them the multiple. All right, Lisa Su is live. Let's go to her. Let's see what she has to say. And then we'll keep going from there.
Share in them. Why is Meta taking a share in you?
Well, here's the thing that's important about AI infrastructure, Jim. We are at a time and a place where the industry is moving so fast, and it's about how do we accelerate the rate and pace of innovation. And that's exactly what our strategic relationship with Meta is all about. We've been working really well together. Our teams are very much, working on sort of the future, but we wanted to take a big step function increase in that engagement. And that's the beauty of this agreement that we're talking about. It is actually a win for AMD, it's a win for Meta, and it's a win for our shareholders in the sense that we're deploying at huge scale. I mean, 6 gigawatts is an incredible amount of compute. We are agreeing to optimize hardware, software, and systems together, and we are optimizing specifically for the most important AI workloads going forward. So I view this as really tying the company strategically. And when you think about, there are very few companies that can actually invest at the scale that we're talking about. It's a great partnership.
Lisa, I wanted to follow up on that particular area in terms of the warrants here. It's 160 million shares of AMD common structured to vest again at specific milestones associated with, as you write in the release, the GPU shipments and when they're achieved. You had a similar deal with OpenAI when you announced that. It was also 160 million. And some of your shareholders, a couple of them I spoke to this morning, said that's 20% of the company conceivably under warrant here. Why are you including these? I mean, you explained it to a certain extent, but the cynics would say, well, you have to because otherwise they're not going to buy your chips. How do you respond to that?
Oh, David, I would take a step back and say, look, we are sizing this AI accelerator market at, $1 trillion over the next 5 years. It's a huge, huge market. And we're actually at an inflection point where, I'm a big believer in there's no one size fits all. Frankly, you need a lot of different types of compute. AMD has all of the pieces. So we have CPUs, GPUs, we have the system infrastructure. And what we want to do is place bets on, who we think are going to be the winners in AI innovation going forward. So this is about strategic partnership. I think, everything that we do when we look at the structures of this is to ensure that it's a win-win. So everything is performance-based. There's a tremendous amount of revenue coming into AMD. Every gigawatt of compute is, double-digit billions of revenue to us. And then when you think about all of the ecosystem value in terms of increasing, and improving our hardware ecosystem, our software ecosystem, and it really accrues to every customer that uses AMD. So it is a special time, it's a special place, and it's an opportunity for us to supersize what was already a fantastic partnership.
Right. But again, I guess just to back to the inclusion of the warrants is something that had to happen, or is part of the negotiation overall. Can you sort of just explain? Again, it's 20% potentially, dilution. I know the deal overall may end up being accretive, but how do you explain it to your shareholders in terms of why they should look at it as a positive, the inclusion of the warrants?
It is absolutely a win-win from our shareholder standpoint, because at the end of the day, what we have put out is a very, very ambitious plan, a very ambitious financial model. And, what this is it really is, clearly an opportunity to expand beyond what a regular commercial deal would have been. I think, look, these are special arrangements. I would call this one of the most transformational deals for us as a company. We have a lot of other partnerships that are also extremely beneficial, and we will continue to expand the overall AI capabilities that we have. But when you look at these opportunities, they're really like once in a generation opportunities to completely tie our roadmap to one of the leaders in the market.
I couldn't agree more, because you don't want them to walk away. You've got to make a long-term relationship. You already have that. But this means to me that tomorrow they're not going to say, you know what, it was really great to meet you, but we just, Nvda, Jensen Huang just came up with this and we got to say goodbye. But on the conference call, Vivek Arya, I know you respect him. He's Bank of America.
Saas names going green. Lots of different names going green. I mean, we're going to see if these SaaS names can actually have momentum. Microsoft up 1%, but you are seeing SaaS start to at least try to reverse today.
Analyst, he says, you're giving away $30 billion roughly of value in your stock, and in return, you're getting about $30 billion to $35 billion of net income. It seems like an even swap. Intelligent question. What's the answer?
The answer, Jim, is clearly it's much bigger than that. And we have the opportunity to align our roadmaps over multiple generations. And when I go back to, this is a $1 trillion market. We are in a super cycle for AI. We have, frankly, great partnerships. I think Meta is going to lead in this space, and we absolutely want to partner with leaders. Frankly, we have a number of other partnerships. OpenAI is also a great partner as we look across the board. This is about making the right bets at the right time. So from an economic standpoint, it is absolutely beneficial to our shareholders, and we look at it as additive to our strategy.
I agree with that. Now, I do want to get a little existential, and I don't mind doing that with you because you're a thoughtful person in this industry. There's an outfit, Citrini comes out with this 2028 global intelligence crisis. I don't mean to insult you. You've been in this industry forever, and this is a very, in some ways, flippant piece. But one of the themes is that the industrial revolution that Jens is talking about, that I know you believe in, the fourth industrial, is really going to wipe out jobs. And I really disagree with that, because I remember when the iPhone came out, who knew that 2 million people were going to have a job just doing apps? Give me your feeling about the fourth industrial revolution and whether it will create more jobs than it wipes out.
Apple 3%. We're seeing some big moves here, folks. Apple 275. The stock was below 260 last week. Let me know in the chat if people think it's a bull trap or not, or are we actually getting a bit of a real reversal from the 3 weeks of carnage on SaaS?
Well, I want to be very clear, Jim. I think AI is absolutely the most transformational technology that we have seen, in our lifetime. It has the opportunity to transform every business, every operation, each of our lives. It's the way we experience healthcare, the way we experience education, really the way we live. And when you think about that, it is about how do we use that technology. So the idea that AI is going to replace everything, I am not a believer in that. I'm a believer in AI is going to make each of us better and each of our businesses better. And we might have to retrain. We definitely have to ensure that we know how to use the tools, but we have to figure out how to harness the power of the technology instead of being afraid of the technology.
Although, Lisa, I mean, not to belabor this, but this is not an iPhone, right? This is a replacement for cognitive work. And wherever you're going to try to retrain, some argue, it's going for that area too. I'm not sure I understand why it shouldn't disintermediate Amex and why it shouldn't crush consumption if it really wipes out a lot of white-collar work.
I don't see it that way, Carl. I really see it as an opportunity for us to take the technology and rethink how we use it. and rethink our business processes. Like I'll tell you, in our world, it's all about how do we build chips faster. This deal with Meta is about a custom GPU optimized for their workloads. We can do that faster and better because of the power of AI. But the fundamental technology has to be put together overall. We have to create and invent it, and then AI can help us make it faster, more efficient, more productive, more cost-effective.
How long do you think we need to create and invent it before it can do it itself?
We are nowhere close to it's inventing itself, Carl. I can tell you that. At the end of the day, there's a lot of secret sauce that you have to do for the first time, and then you have the opportunity to make it more capable going forward.
Lisa, you talk about Meta being a leader here. I'm just curious as to how you see that company evolving. We've talked a lot about the fact that it doesn't have a cloud business, for example, yet is spending the same amount in CapEx and is clearly already seeing a return on its ad business. I know a lot of this is for them to say, but I am curious as their partner, how you see their business evolving.
Well, again, I would say that Meta and Mark have one of the most ambitious visions for how they see AI evolving over time. I think they are big believers in investment in the AI infrastructure. I think we are there to enable it, but they're also making bets of their own. And I view our partnership as one of those big bets that they're making. So this is really an opportunity. We're still so early in the cycle, David, that I think people are placing their bets on where they think they're going to see the most return on investment. And I have a lot of confidence in Mark and what Meta is doing to really see that return at the end of the cycle.
When you say we're so early in the cycle, can you just put that in some perspective for our viewers?
Well, we're talking, and we were just talking with Carl about the fact that AI is getting so good it could replace us all. Sitting on the inside, AI is good, but it is not like anywhere near its maturity in terms of capability. We're still learning a lot about how the technology works. We're learning a lot about how to train the technology. We're learning a lot about how to use the technology. And so when I say we're early in the cycle, we're early in the cycle of seeing what the ultimate payoff can be. And that's where, from us in the industry standpoint, we have to invest ahead of the curve and really point in the direction that we think is going to have the largest benefit. So that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're investing for a 5+ year cycle and a 5+ year roadmap because we see that there's a lot of benefit to having more efficient, more capable infrastructure to unlock the power of AI.
Lisa, when I listen to you, I'm conscious of the fact that we will not all be replaced at the same time. Fantastic work. Lisa Su is the chairman and CEO of AMD. And once again, for those who know the company, this is the greatest remarkable transformation
All right. That's what we got with Lisa Su. We had a couple of rough days from Friday to Monday. On top of that, I mean, last week was a rough week. So the fact that we're getting a rebound here is not crazy to see. Now, that rebound is not necessarily, Shopify hit 145 a couple weeks ago. It's at 120. So it's not necessarily a massive rebound, but it's up from 107. 107 to 120 is not horrible. DoorDash, that's up 3%. Amazon's up about 0.5%. Palantir trying to go green. Robinhood back above 70. Bitcoin, 63.5, which is good. That thing was stuck at 62. Rocket Lab still below 70. ASTS below 84. Intuit, that's up 3%. Tesla back above 400 as well. Tesla's been holding on. CrowdStrike going green. I mean, the big winner today looks like Apple. SoFi is up 20 cents. That's nice, but SoFi has caused a lot of pain. So, I mean, this thing's got to get at least back above 20, I think, to get people excited. But SoFi right there, 1847. We'll take it today. We're going to have to take it. ASML, 1496. Ford's up 5%. Microsoft's at 387. I don't know if these candles really are that trustworthy, to be honest. S&P, about a 0.3% move right there. Zeta getting a little bit of a bid before earnings today. We will have those earnings later today. That's up 5.6%. Again, I don't think Zeta should have ever been below $15, but I don't think Microsoft should be below 400. Microsoft right there at 387. Do you think that Saas has bottomed here? I think it's too... I think there's a lot of indicators that say Saas has bottomed. However, the idea that you could accurately call the Saas bottom to me feels a bit disingenuous because once again, do you have a firm grasp on how the market is pricing in these multiples that are getting compressed? Now, have the multiples already gotten compressed enough Yes, I would say, which leads me to think it's more closer to the bottom than not. But it's not necessarily like DeepSeek, where again, after a week, everyone realized, oh, there's going to be more compute, not less compute because of DeepSeek. Right now, people are legit thinking that there's going to be less need for Salesforce level contracts if you have the intermediary that is disintermediated via something like OpenAI and Anthropic. And I think that's the broader question. Having said that, Salesforce down 40% this year. It's getting a nice rebound today, up 4%. It feels like enough pain. But yes, as someone says in the chat, why would you try to call a bottom? I think that's the better question, right? Because it's like, I don't think we have enough data to easily say that. Now, if you're trying to buy leaps on IGV, you'd probably want to call a bottom here. IGV up 2% because, you would get the best entry if you are coming in on the bottom. Which, again, at some point, you would think the selling stops. This thing was at 120. Now it's at 78. But I think at 90, people thought the selling would stop, and it didn't. Which is the fear here. Is CoreWeave getting a move? CoreWeave is getting a move. That's up 6. Nebius is up 2. Figma up 10 definitely makes me feel the market wants to call a bottom on Saas. I mean, Figma had an amazing earnings. The fact that that's actually getting bought up today, that is... See, well, here's the question. Here's the broader question. Yesterday, the market was selling off Saas like there was no tomorrow. Is this individual fund managers waking up today and saying, we were wrong for selling it, we're buying it back today? Or are these algos creating a head fake here, trying to get people to think that Saas is back in action like they did 2 Thursdays ago before it dumped again? Or is it real? Retail's already bought the dip on Saas, so I don't think this is retail today. Like, retail's been buying the dip on Saas for the past 2 weeks, so I really don't think retail's moving yet. But I also don't think fund managers that dumped all these names to the tune of 7 to 8% on average yesterday are now waking up and they're like, yeah, let's get back in. It absolutely feels more fake than not, which is, again, the scary part of sort of easily getting into some of these names. It's all Claude's new algos. Dude, if Claude doesn't have a hedge fund that's trading these moves, they are missing out on so much money. Like, literally, Claude could just vibe code up a hedge fund, feed it the information. They don't have to do it on insider information either. Literally, as soon as Claude presses tweet on their CrowdStrike competitor, pseudo competitor, the fund can immediately just short CrowdStrike. Like, they literally just need to go short every time they publicly announce a new product feature on a SaaS name. And they would make so much money. Microsoft right there, 386. Nvidia getting back above 190. Could it be a short squeeze? But why? What's the catalyst for a squeeze today? Like, yes, IGV is definitely heavily shorted, and so are a lot of these SaaS names. There is no headline, by the way, for those that are asking what's the headline. There is nothing. Outside of this Meta AMD thing, there's absolutely nothing that I think would get a bunch of people to wake up and be like, we have to get into service now. If you didn't get into it yesterday at 99, why are you getting in it today at 104? Like, it just feels more fake than not. Adobe, but I'm happy we're getting a recovery here. I just don't know if you fully trust it. Adobe 255. That goes green as well. Citron still short SanDisk. That stock down 2% right here. Again, Citron is a notorious short. It looks like their short report, though, is saying that Samsung is better. I'm reading from it right here. Every SanDisk bull should read the attached article. Samsung just told the world they won't sell anything under 50% margins, and they're moving their best chips into the same premium SSD market that SanDisk calls home. They're not just the capacity gorilla anymore. They're going after SanDisk's best customers with cheaper, newer technology. And the only thing keeping supply tight right now, Samsung's temporary yield problems in another product line. The bottleneck has an expiration date. So Citron's basically saying you're going to wake up one morning, there's not going to be a bottleneck on supply for memory, and SanDisk and Micron are going to collapse. Micron right there, 423 as well. Anthropic developed plugins with FactSet and other partners. Anthropic links AI agent with tools for investment banking, HR, and DocuSign partners with Anthropic. DocuSign is up 4%. Anthropic developing plugins with FactSet. FactSet is like a Bloomberg company, it's similar to Bloomberg in terms of market aggregation of data. That stock is public. Are we up We are up 7%. Wow. There you go. So they're going to be using agents inside of FactSet's data intelligence. Anthropic buys out Wall Street. This is actually kind of bullish the entire investment banking ecosystem. Like, this should just make banks more productive as they can probably have more tools to navigate data. I don't think this necessarily kills any industry. This doesn't feel like one of those headlines that would do that. Bloomberg, by the way, has been using advanced AI for a year now, so I don't know if they're necessarily partnered with Anthropic, but they've been implementing AI for a while. IBM getting a rebound right there, up 4%. As that also goes green. Mexico president says government is considering legal action following Elon Musk's comment related to drug cartels. Legal action against Elon or against the drug cartel? What did Elon even say? Someone in the chat, let me know what Elon said. What the hell did Elon say? Oh, shit. Hold on. Elon said, quote, the Mexican president is just saying what her cartel bosses tell her to say. Let's just say the punishment for disobeying is a little worse than a quote unquote performance improvement plan. Damn. Is she going to sue him for saying that? Holy crap. That is, well, add another lawsuit to Elon's list of lawsuits. I do think she has some other stuff to worry about right now, given the cartel is going crazy in the country over Elon's tweets. I mean, probably have a lot of stuff to try to navigate. S&P 683. Saas losing steam. IGV up, starting to get a little bit of a red candle. All right, let's see. I'm curious. Does Saas turn red today? I am very curious. Does Saas turn red today? Having said that, that is a little aggressive for Elon saying that right now. Legal action, though. That's wild. Meta and Coinbase are partnering together. Meta is planning a stablecoin comeback in second half of the year, eyeing a third-party vendor as a key partner to power payments across Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. Oh, boy. I don't really like that Meta is touching crypto again. It didn't work out the first time. If anyone remembers the Libra coin, I kind of would like Zucks to focus on AI, not crypto. Then again, stablecoins are a massive opportunity, especially if payments on WhatsApp and WhatsApp business in particular take off. Meta is actually down on the day, down 1%. Although AMD is green, AMD 211. All right, I guess crypto coming back to the Meta ecosystem right here. ETF inflows year to date, we just got those numbers. Looks like we are at $304 billion, folks. $304 billion. ETF inflows up $304 billion year to date, which is double the all-time record pace from last year. So even though the S&P's done nothing, $304 billion have come into the market this year. The Qs have generated a year-to-date flow of negative $4 billion, VOO $30 billion, gold at $2.6 billion, VTI at $9 billion. S&P has actually been down $19 billion year-to-date, but still a net new $304 billion into ETF. So even though the money is not being allocated necessarily just into tech, it's definitely coming into the market. It's definitely coming into the market. All right, do we have some macro data? Let's see. We have Richmond Fed Manufacturing Index. We came in at -10. The street wanted -8. That's a miss. Shipments Index, street wanted -6. We came in at -13. Revenues Index, street wanted -5. We came in at -8. These are misses across the board. And then wholesale inventories month over month, the pricing on that, the street wants 0.1%. Still waiting for the number. We came in at 0.2. Consumer confidence came in at 91.2 versus 87. So that's a beat on consumer confidence. So at least you got consumer confidence beating. You got wholesale inventory pricing beating. You got the manufacturing index, however, going the opposite direction. Let's pull this up right here.
This is a February read, expecting 87.1. Our last read was really weak. Jump, 91.2. That is a big jump from 84.5, which was the original release. That was the weakest since 2014, but that was upgraded to 89 even. 91.2 would be the best, well, going back to the end of last year before the bottom fell out. And if we look at what's going on from consumer confidence from the present situation standpoint, also a big beat. 120 would be the best level since December as well, when it was 123. Last month's 113, the weakest since 21, was upgraded to 121.8, which now changes the dynamic. 120 now is the weakest since last month's big upward revision. And finally, what may lie ahead? 72.0. That would be the strongest since the end of last year as well. The bottom dropped out on all three of these readings last month. The original reading, 65.1, was upgraded to 67.2. On Richmond Manufacturing, minus 10. So that means we are now, 10, 11 consecutive negative reads in a row. And if we look at the business confidence side, the service side, minus 10 as well. Minus 10 would be the weakest since it was minus 11 at the end of last year.
So we do have a lot of negative readings on the manufacturing index, which, I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily going to cause a sell-off here, but the market might not love it. TSM, though, is basically a $2 trillion company, $1.99 trillion. That's an all-time high, folks, for TSM, which is, I think, potentially an indicator for how the market's thinking of NVIDIA, even though NVIDIA is not really pumping. 190 on NVIDIA. AMD holding on to a 7% move. That's not necessarily getting hit. Tesla, once again, holding on to 400. Duolingo, I'm actually very interested in those earnings. Like, I really want to see if this thing just collapses and the street is just like, yep, AI is taking over these companies and we're not investing in them, or can they prove AI is a tailwind for them? That's going to be on Thursday. SanDisk still down 2, Adobe up 2, ServiceNow up 2, Salesforce up 4. I mean, the SaaS names have sold off from about 20 minutes ago. Salesforce is at 188, now at 184, but they are still green. Meta, unfortunately, losing 630. This was at 660 on Friday, and this was at 740 2 weeks ago. Complete round trip after those earnings. Yes, we do have Zeta today after the bell as well. Look, I think Zeta is going to crush it. I don't think they're going to be profitable. I think that's going to be 2 quarters from now. But they're going to guide for 34% revenue growth. Adjusted EBITDA is going to be at the highest level it's ever been. Stock's already sold off a lot. So, if they really take it to $10, okay. But the problem is, every time I think they can have a good earnings, I remember AppLovin, which had the best earnings from a pure growth perspective out of any company in the entire stock market. And that stock is now below 370. And it fell 18% on earnings. So I just don't know. If they're going to take Microsoft and Amazon down, I mean, they have every right to take down every other stock if those names can't catch a bid. Broadcom still down 3%. TMDX also has earnings today as well. Transmedics 136. That's up 1.4%. Palantir getting hit by the algos, not really rebounding with the SaaS names. So Palantir is still red, 2.7% right here, 127. Kind of being put into the high beta growth bucket today, a lot more than just the typical SaaS name. Ondas, that's down 4% as well. Apple really is the safety, folks. Apple 273. That's where people are hiding out today. There's the heat map. It's a relatively green day. Figma up 6. AppLovin still down. Healthcare and financials are down. Tech is carrying the S&P today. Consumer defensives are up. Industrials are slightly up. Real estate slightly up. Lilly's down because of the headline from Novo as well. So Lilly got hit. It was down almost 5%. Now it's only down 1%. And Nvda just at 190. Oscar, we haven't looked at Oscar in a minute. Oscar is, wow. When did Oscar get below $12? $11.78. Yeah, I mean, this thing relies on subsidies and extensions of those subsidies. I know people say there's a fundamental thesis outside of that, and I think there really is, but just like a lot of these other stocks, the narrative is reality here. And unfortunately, I think those subsidies are the narrative. 1178 on Oscar. That's down 5.4% on the day. How about UNH? Is UNH getting hit? UNH also down 2 points. Okay, all the healthcare names, I think. Molina. Yeah, Molina's down 4. What's the healthcare headline today? That's got to be something a bit more serious. Causing all those. Why is Broadcom dropping? I think the market feels that Meta not buying Google TPUs and going with AMD and Nvidia. Which, remember that headline in November that Meta was going to buy all these Google TPUs? It was all BS. Like, maybe they're going to buy a little bit of TPU, but like, there has been no massive multi-billion-dollar contract around Google TPUs and Meta. So, Broadcom obviously is the supplier for the TPUs, which is why I think the street's selling off Broadcom right there. Yeah, you're seeing a lot of these health and pharma stocks go red today. S&P very close to going red, folks. She's holding on by a thread. I mean, literally every day, it's a little bit of a pump, then a dump, then it flatlines, then it goes down a little bit more, then it goes up a little bit. I mean, it has been staying in this range. SanDisk is now officially selling off 3%. There you go. That's the Citron dump. Does anyone agree? Would anyone short SanDisk, or at least buy puts on it, if not short, with Citron? Or do you think it's too much of a dangerous game? The stock's up 180% this year. Now it's up like 175, but Netflix is also red. Ukraine denies Russian claims that it is trying to obtain nuclear weapons. Ukraine spokesperson says. We'll see if Trump has any comments on this whole nuclear weapon claim from the Russian Foreign Ministry. U.S. home price growth slowed to its lowest annual level in over a decade as mortgage rates and inflation continue to weigh on home buyers. We saw those pending home sales last week were really not in a good spot right here. I think we have some coverage on that as well. Let's pull this up.
There's a good story there for the Trump administration in terms of progress. At the start of his term, we were seeing mortgage rates around 7% on the 30-year mortgage. Look where they are right now today. They're below 6%. And actually, we saw that for the first time in years after his $200 billion mortgage bond purchase initiative that he put in place, telling Fannie and Freddie to do that. Look, there's still affordability issues in the housing market. I think we should mention that. There's low inventory, there's high prices, and prices continue to remain elevated. There's also leftover from the post-pandemic market. But here's a 5-year chart of the mortgage rate, and you can see it's down. I mean, it's not where it was in Trump 1, but we're coming from these elevated prices. Remember, they got, David, almost at 8% during October 2023. So yes. This has been so far so good.
A focus of the administration. Obviously, part of his overall attempts to get rates down have been very much focused on trying to get the mortgage rate down and get housing going, because it has been
tough
in the doldrums.
Yeah, and the average new home buyer is 40 years old, and that's a problem. First time home buyer, and there's clearly awareness of that. So that's one. Another one that he campaigned really hard on that affects your everyday affordability is gas prices. So I think we should look there. They have declined actually pretty substantially since President Trump took his second term, January 2025. Gas prices then were around $3.07 to $3.12 per gallon during that time. And, now we've come back down to late February averages below $3 a gallon, $2.87 to $2.94 range. So again, they've come up a little bit lately to start this year because of weather, because of also concerns around Iran. There's market prices here as well, but he pushed this one hard on the campaign trail.
But the question I always have, and this is for every president, and we know this, obviously following this so closely, really, how much impact do they have? I mean, there's so many different things. It's a worldwide market. You point out Iran now, it's sending prices up a bit. Production here in the U.S. has not really gone up, despite his protestations that it should.
And obviously, if we strike Iran or get into a war with them, that's not going to be the best for oil prices. As of now, it looks like maybe that's not going to happen. Netflix going green right here. But if that were to happen, not the best. And I imagine Trump will talk about that today in the State of the Union. Oil prices are up this morning. WTI crude at $66.50. That's up 0.3%. Brent still above 70 here. TSM, that continues to gain momentum. Again, 383 up 3.5. Very curious to see if the S&P can hold here. Or do we flip red? Usually around 10:30, you tend to see a little bit of a sell-off. Hims is still down 7. Google's up 1, or Google's down 1. Shopify losing a lot of its pump. Salesforce still trying to hold up 4. Nvidia's a stablecoin, yeah, basically. Ren 3.6% move. You know, the neoclouds actually haven't been doing that bad. Nebius back above 100. It's almost like they've been starting to get pegged with Nvidia, which is in a much friendlier bucket. CoreWeave up 5%. And this Meta AMD deal, I mean, you're going to need someone to implement all these GPUs. The neoclouds probably are going to try to take some money if Meta's getting ready to spend about 80 billion of that. Oscar still down 4, UNH down 2, Apple still green, Palantir trying to recover 130 right here, just at 129. And then AppLovin still down 1%. Yeah, Wolf got an 8.5% move today. Cypher's moving up. I mean, you are seeing the, what do you call it? What is it? The data center plays coincide with NVIDIA. And I think that's why they're getting a bit more momentum. SanDisk still down 3 here. Still down 3. I saw a bunch of you in the chat saying you wouldn't short SanDisk. I wouldn't either. But like, it is interesting to see some of the bigger high-profile shorts coming after it. DigitalOcean up 6, IBM up 4, Home Depot up 3, Oracle up 2, Intel up 1, Nebius still up 2 as well. FICO has been in an ugly, ugly drawdown. Wow, it's down another 4% today. Is this on the Anthropic headline? On the investment banking stuff? I don't think that should necessarily affect FICO. 4% on FICO today. What the hell is going on? FICO. Yeah, is Claude securitizing mortgages now? FICO is in its worst drawdown since the great financial crisis. Like, why is this red? What the hell happened to this today? Tanner says, Amit, did I sell you on Meta Glasses workout feature? You would buy it, don't lie. I'm sorry. This is my contrarian take. I really don't think the glasses are going to work. Even if they can help you in your workout. I don't know, dude. I feel like you could just wear the Apple Watch. It can also track your workout. I don't know why you need glasses to track the workout. I really don't think glasses is going to be the killer AI hardware product. And I hope I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, then we're going to have to make billions of glasses, and there's probably going to be a lot of money, and you know, Nvidia is probably going to get involved with it. There's probably if it actually replaces the iPhone, it'll probably be a massive industry. I just don't think that's happening. You're wearing glasses. Yes, just because I'm wearing glasses so that I can see doesn't mean I think AI glasses will work. Just because I'm using Weeble's charts doesn't mean I think they're a better company than Robinhood. I don't think it's going to happen. That's my thoughts. I think, in fact, the fact that I do wear glasses actually gives me a little bit more credibility on explaining why I don't think glasses are the next form factor. Like, I've never understood that story. AppLovin right there, that's down 1%. Palantir still down 2. Imagine everyone wearing the same looking dorky glasses. Yeah, that'd be hilarious, actually. That would be funny. Claude bot plus Meta glasses. Again, I think some people will wear glasses, but the people that actually defend glasses as the next evolution of computing, I just think you're wrong. Respectfully, I really think you're absolutely wrong. I don't think billions of people across the planet will wear AI glasses and engage with the world in that way. I just don't. I don't think so. Maybe I'll be wrong, but I don't think that plays out. S&P 683. All right, so it's make or break right here. Either we're going to lose 683 and go red, or we're going to try to get a move up to 684.50. If we get that 684.50, we have probably a green day waiting for us. It just looks kind of dicey across the board. That data we got from the Richmond Fed was not the best data. If that was a beat, I think we would have already been above 685. BTC is Making a little move, 63.6. $1,000 candle from 62. What if Palantir made the glasses? Dude, Palantir already is doing some mixed reality stuff with glasses, which is cool, but like, there's an actual purpose of that in the enterprise. For the consumer, I don't see it. Don't see that thesis. Shopify almost going red here. Shopify's got to hold on. Then Amazon is flat as well. What time is the State of the Union? It'll be at 9. I'll be live at 9, but honestly, it's probably going to be at 9:30. It usually never starts on time. So I think Steve will be with me. We'll do it together. Into it, by the way, that entire pump completely got, not wrecked, but it's not red yet, but it did not hold on to it. And so we'll see what Trump has to say. By the way, Anthropic is allowing their employees to sell stock at a $350 billion valuation in the secondary markets. So if you know an Anthropic employee and you want to buy some stock, maybe you can negotiate a deal with them. $6 billion of stock will be sold for Anthropic employees. And this is probably going to happen in a couple of days. Like there is ample amount of demand, especially with all the hype. Honestly, Anthropic needs to go public soon. I don't think I've ever seen more hype around a startup than what we've seen with Anthropic. And it should happen by end of year. If they don't go public by the end of the year, I feel like they're missing out on the opportunity. So I would expect that Anthropic IPO to happen, and it's probably going to be a very big IPO. By the way, Stripe, I'm seeing the headline right now, just hit $159 billion valuation. Wow. 159 for Stripe. That's a little aggressive in a world in which FICO is down 50%. How much revenue does Stripe do? I don't think we have the exact numbers, but Stripe's, okay, Gemini's telling me they did $5 billion in revenue in 2024. They grew from 3.8 billion. So the growth rate on that, if again, take these numbers with a grain of salt, is 34%. Let's assume they did 30% in 2025. So that means their revenue would be 6.7 billion in revenue. They're trading at 159. So that is a 24 times price to sales. Revolut, from my understanding, only trades at 10 times price to sales. And I don't like Revolut's valuation either, but Stripe is trading at more than double Revolut's valuation. Revolut also is doing relatively the same amount of revenue. It's like $1 billion less, but it's not like it's that different. So are you willing to pay 24 times to get access to Stripe shares? I'm not. And I don't think the public market is willing to either. I think JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs will say they're willing to underwrite the IPO to pump it up, but they're not actually buying Stripe at that valuation. Stripe should buy PayPal. You're talking about buyers for PayPal. Dude, that would be. Now, look, maybe Stripe shouldn't because, Stripe is probably a much better company than having to integrate with the legacy of PayPal. But, I think at that point, they would literally be dominating global payments if that happens. Yeah, Adyen is much cheaper. Hood is 72. We went green. All right, Hoodie trying to wake up from the dead right there. 72. S&P, by the way, going green as well. 684. We get 684.50. Maybe we're not in a horrible situation. Do you think the S&P will tank after NVIDIA earnings? I think NVIDIA just has to crush, and then we'll see what happens. Because the thing is, if they crush and the stock goes up, obviously the S&P is not going to crash. But if they crush and the stock goes down and the S&P goes down, I don't think that's the worst reason for the S&P to go down, because it would just be an irrational reason, like we've seen every earnings over the past year at this point, where NVIDIA dumps. Remember, the average move on NVIDIA is about 4% over the past 15 quarters to the upside. So, I'm expecting a low side move of 175 if it really wants to go there. Realistically, I think 180. If Jensen actually gives the guidance that the whisper numbers are calling for, which is almost 40% year-over-year growth, then for the fiscal guide, then realistically, what I think happens is it goes to 205, then it dumps back to 190. I think that's like how I think it plays out. But if it breaks above 200 again for the first time since October, that would be a big middle finger to all the bears, because a lot of people say NVIDIA is already topped, and the top was in October. I disagree with that. Having said that, I think if the market's not ready to go up, then NVIDIA could be range bound again for the next few months. But if we break above 200 again, I think 210 was the absolute top, 212. If we break above 212, even if we come back down, then those October highs can be taken out, which would be very nice to see. Iran moving up 5.2% again. These neoclouds, which again, that Strachini article was super bullish on the neoclouds, actually. They were bullish on anything that is actually associated with the incremental dollar of AI revenue spend, which ends up being your hyperscalers, your NVIDIAs, your AMDs, your Broadcoms, your neoclouds. And they were super bearish any platform that's using AI, ironically, because it's going to get disrupted from AI itself. Again, Jensen doesn't want to see the software companies not only pay Jensen, they pay the hyperscalers. The hyperscalers pay Jensen. So, like, I don't think he wants to see Salesforce go to zero because he knows that he needs Benioff on his side. And I think he's going to be very political on the earnings call tomorrow to try to navigate this entire SaaS sell-off. Zeta breaking 16. Okay, not bad. 7% move right there. AMD still holding its pump, 211. That's up 7.6. This seems like a bull trap. It could be. If we get S&P above 685, I feel like we have less of a chance of it being a bull trap. She's fighting 684.70. Let's see if we can get there. Intel, that green as well. Intel, slightly green. Yep, that's up 2.5%. What if we were engineered by AI and it's all come full circle? That would go to Elon's simulation thesis, right? That we were all programmed, and it's now coming to fruition. Who knows? Maybe that's how it plays out. Are the rare earth names up? USAR, that's up 7%. That's getting a big move. CRML, that's up 7%. MP is up 4%. So SaaS, FinTech, semis, and rare earths are all pumping again. Rocket Lab's trying to pump. Space is trying to enter into the party. Reddit's getting a nice move up a little bit. AppLovin just turned green. I mean, AppLovin was just below 370. 685 on the S&P. There you go. Let's see if we can keep moving forward here. Quantum, are we moving today? Quantum is also green. Look at that. D-Wave up 3. This market, dude. It is so emotional. So freaking emotional. Every day, back and forth. I still don't get why FICO's getting hit that bad. Gold and silver are... Silver just turned green. Gold is still red. Weird. And silver trying to get up about 2% right here. Yeah, NVIDIA does have a strategic partnership with Salesforce. I mean, NVIDIA has a strategic partnership with a lot of these companies. Because, again, NVIDIA wants Agentforce to win because Agentforce is more demand for GPU. Like, the thing about NVIDIA is everything wins. Or NVIDIA wins everything if these other companies continue to use anything that's rooted in AI or agents. Like, it all comes back to NVIDIA. So they are happy to partner with pretty much everyone in whatever way they can to say, like, hey, this is how AI is having an impact on your business. It all comes back to NVIDIA. And obviously, AMD gets it, Broadcom gets it, the hyperscalers get it with cloud compute. But at its core, Jensen has zero incentive to beat anybody up. It's just, does the market believe in it? My wife's birthday is coming up. I need gold to go down. Yeah, gold back above 5,000 has been pretty good. TLT is green. That means the 10-year should be coming down right here. Let's check on the 10-year. It is slightly up, not up a lot, basically flat. But it is nice to see TLT at least get a little bit of a bump. Claude just tweeted introducing co-work and plugin updates that help enterprise customize Claude for every better collaboration with every team. Okay. I don't know if that's going to kill any industry, but there you go. With Claude, co-work, and plugin, you can find new updates for different enterprises. They've integrated with Slack. The co-work thing that came out 3 weeks ago is kind of crazy because, I mean, quite literally, Claude is saying, yeah, a lot of these white-collar jobs that do this stuff, you're just not going to need. Now, again, you had a lot of Fed speak today that also came out that said the impact of job loss via AI is unclear. They actually referenced the Citrini article as well. So, I mean, when Goolsby is talking about the Citrini article, you know that that article has had an impact. Nvidia just went green. There you go, 191.88. And I think the Fed speakers are now going to be looking very seriously to see if AI actually ends up having an impact on the labor market. Wow, S&P 686. We were just at 683. You're making a nice big move right there. I don't know why Google's down. Google, I mean, it's barely down, but it is down. It did get a little bit of a pump yesterday before it fell red. Nvidia almost 192. MP still down. Rocket Lab looks like it's about to go green. S&P, she can make her way back to 690. That would be incredible. I actually don't know why Palantir is down from all the software names. It's very close to turning green, but I imagine it's being treated as high beta growth even more than software today, which all those names are still getting hit. Home Depot's up 3, Oracle's up 3, IBM's up 5 on a rebound, CrowdStrike's up 2, ASTS up 1. VIX is under 20. That's correct. That's actually really good, to be honest. VIX right there, down 5%. I mean, if that VIX keeps collapsing, this looks like it could be a really good day of recovery. What do you think about SoundHound? I mean, it's up 7% right here. Is it down year to date? This company is a good growth stock in regards to it grows. I just felt the valuation you were paying for growth was, oh yeah, it's a down 20% this year. It was always excessive, even when this thing was at like $20 back in October. Yeah, I think there's a lot of companies with a lot of moats that are juicier than SoundHound, even though their growth is good. But again, you're paying 24 times sales. I mean, Stripe is trading at 24 times sales. Like, why are you paying 24 times sales for SoundHound? What are you getting out of that? So it's never been the most exciting to me. You are seeing a rebound here, up 7%. SoFi, are we making a move? SoFi trying to get back up to 19. Iran state media, a U.S. strike on Iran is a real gamble. Iran's deputy foreign minister says Tehran is ready to take any necessary step to reach a deal with the U.S. I mean, that's actually good. Even more diplomacy entering. Cypher's up 10%. S&P is really moving now. She's going for 687, and if she does, that would be a hell of a move. Robinhood back above 72. Iran at 45. Grab's getting hit. Not sure why Grab's getting hit. Uber is still flat on the day. Grab down 10 cents. Is Lyft getting hit? Lyft is also slightly flat. Coinbase almost recovering. Verizon finally goes down. Yeah, there you go. Verizon down is signal for the S&P to move up. What do you think about Rubrik? I do not understand enough about this business, but, I mean, I think Sam talked about it on the show when it was around 75. It is at the behest of all the other software names that got hit. It's kind of like, it's not cybersecurity, but it gets kind of thrown in that bucket as well, even though it's not necessarily a cybersecurity name. Yeah, it's up 5% because Salesforce and Adobe are up 4%. I mean, like, all these SaaS names at this point are just moving together. And I don't even think you can have a fundamental thesis on any of them outside of where they're trading. I mean, Adobe is trading at half of its historical price to sales. Historical price to sales is 8. Adobe's trading at 4.4. At the peak, I think it was at almost 25. So you're getting a discount on these companies. The question is the market going to be willing to once again pay up even the average premium that they were paying for the past 15 years? Nvda just touched 192 as well. Yeah, Uber did buy an app yesterday, Spot Hero. It didn't really move the market, but it looks like they paid about $400 or $500 million for that company as well. Will we hold intraday is the question. That is indeed the question here. Let's see if we can get some coverage on some of the different headlines we're seeing. Talked about the Russia stuff, talked about the Iran stuff. We had okay, let me pull this up. Is this what we're looking at here? I think we had one of these senators go live. He's live right now. All right, folks. Let's see what Miss Elizabeth Warren has to say.
Consumers have borne more than 90% of the cost of these tariffs. That works out to an average of about $1,700 for every family in this country that they have paid on Donald Trump's illegal tariffs. So I think it's up to the Treasury Secretary to work out a plan and give that money back to the families that it was taken from.
But you know they don't agree with that analysis. I mean, what you just cited, the 90% that from the New York Fed, the White House definitely doesn't agree with it. And there's a lot been written about it. But if you look at some of the Treasury analysis, which I cited before, CPI goods are up 1.4% from April till now. That's where it would show up. It compares to a 0.8% gain in the 12 months leading up to January 2025. It doesn't show that consumers bore 90% of the cost. So it's not exact science.
Actually, you should go back and look at all of the studies around this. And what the economists are showing us is, of course it did. We know exactly how much money was collected. That's where you want to start this. And the average, look at the Joint Economic Council report on this, $1,700. Even the most conservative outlets have said maybe it's closer to $1,000. But the point is that no one is fighting over, is that the American family paid for Donald Trump's illegal tariffs. And when you take money from people illegally, you got to give it back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the other argument is just it would be a very chaotic process legally that could ultimately take years.
Or they could just start cutting checks to American families. They could say, we're going to do it as best we can. We will divide it up and send it out. But it starts with a president of the United States and a secretary of the Treasury that acknowledge that the money was illegally taken away from American families, and it is their responsibility to work out a plan to give it back. Not to fight, to say, oh, I don't want to give you back the money that I have already taken from you. But instead, what Donald Trump and Secretary Bessent are doing is they're saying, gee, how can we find another way to take more money from American families? And this from a president who promised that on day one, he would lower costs for American families. What he's done is he's raised costs for them, and he's done it illegally.
I think they accept the Supreme Court ruling, and they just don't accept that American families have been paying it.
They accept it, but they don't want to give the money back. That's not accepting it. If you took the money,
that would be admitting that the American families are paying.
What part of that are they having a problem with? When you take money illegally, give it back.
They've also instead, as you noted, pivoted to other authorities. 122, Section 122 of the Trade Act of 1974. They can use 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. Do you expect legal challenges to these as well?
I do, but notice the overall move. The overall move is the Supreme Court said you took the money illegally. So their answer is not, we'll give it back. Their answer is, oh, let me find other ways to pick the pockets of American consumers. That's
all right. So you got Warren, who's obviously gonna go on the offense here around what's going on with tariffs. And in the State of the Union, Trump is gonna have to defend the tariffs in some way. For those that don't know how the State of the Union works, usually the party in power is, the president in power is going to be bragging about his accomplishments, and his party, Democrat or Republican, stands up and claps after literally every other paragraph. So it's a lot of standing up and clapping while the other party sits down. So the Democrats are going to be sitting down the whole night, and the Republicans are going to be standing up after every, like, basically 2 minutes and clapping. And, you know, on the tariff stuff, given Trump just got a big hit from the Supreme Court, I think that's going to be one of the first things he tries to address, get the elephant out of the room. And I think there's going to be two things that happens. Number one, he's probably going to, I guess you could say, insult the Supreme Court justices who voted against him. And then he's going to try to defend that the tariffs are still in place and that the decision actually made it more powerful. And we're going to see how the Republicans react to that. Mike Johnson did say yesterday that Congress would be unable to codify some of Trump's new tariffs. Mike Johnson and J.D. Vance will be up with Trump at the podium as he's giving a speech. Got a red candle on the S&P right there. Did touch below 686. Let's see if that materializes or if we can rebound. I mean, it's basically going to be political theater. The State of the Unions are always political theater, no matter who's in charge. But I am just very curious to see how he justifies the tariff stuff in front of the Supreme Court. Because you can tell Trump's annoyed. He's very annoyed that the landmark policy of the first year got hit. Whoa, Tim Cook of Apple was told by the CIA that China would move on Taiwan by 2027, per Mac rumors. That's a hell of an argument if that's true, or even if that rumor has any legitimacy. Mac Rumors is a very popular Apple website that's been covering Apple for a long time. Tim Cook of Apple was told by the CIA that China would move on Taiwan, but how do they get that source? I doubt Tim Cook would tell people that. Dude, if China actually moves on Taiwan, Apple 272, man, I wonder what happens. I really wonder how this plays out. Apple right there, 272. That would definitely stop the necessity to worry about the stock market every day. We'd have some bigger issues on our hand if that takes place. And this is why Anduril and all these other defense contractors continue to say that this is something we can't necessarily ignore. Apple right there, 272. Why would the CIA tell Apple anything? Well, I mean, I think there is a logical argument for why the CIA would tell some of the most important companies that have supply chains in Taiwan about this, because obviously, you know, they probably want those companies to get out or diversify as soon as they can. Granted, I mean, we are so intertwined with China, and our semiconductor supply chain is so intertwined with Taiwan, obviously with TSM, it would feel kind of impossible for us to diversify. Yes, we will have Technical Tuesday today. Apple CEO Tim Cook was a handful of top tech executives who attended a classified CIA briefing warning that China could attack Taiwan by 2027, according to the New York Times. Yeah, that would be a bit aggressive. Again, if that happens, like we've talked about it so many times, I don't know what happens to the world at that point. Because here's the question: do we actually defend Taiwan? Because if we defend Taiwan, we're getting into a war. Like, it's a straight up war at that point. If we don't and we let China take them over, which would not be in anyone's best interests, maybe we avoid a war, but at that point, China gets access to a lot more power than they've ever had if they reunify with Taiwan. I mean, it is such a complicated issue to see how this would end up playing out. Japan says they will defend Taiwan. Dude, Japan, like, at the end of the day, I think the only country that could meaningfully have a chance to defend Taiwan is the United States. Like, if we're being realistic here. Maybe some of the countries could help delay the inevitable, but, like, the U.S. is going to have to step in if we decide to actually defend them. And that's why, you know, presidents have been so weary of the Taiwan situation for decades. Because we know how serious it is in the context of China. MP is still getting a bid right there. Intel as well. 3.5% up on the day. It's crazy that AMD is only up 5%. Yeah, I mean, once again, the market not really. Last time AMD did a deal like this with OpenAI, the stock was up 35%. This time, I think the market's like, hey, you played that trick on us before and nothing happened. We don't see any OpenAI revenue coming in. So until Meta starts paying you, maybe we're not going to give you any love. And I think that's why that stock's barely up today, even though, 5% is not a bad move. The single biggest threat to the world economy, the single biggest point of single failure is that 97% of high-end chips are made in Taiwan, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said. Again, I've told this story before, but I have a friend who works at Anduril, and he told me that he thinks the U.S. government should give Intel $1 trillion. He was being dead serious about this. He's obviously biased because he works at Anduril, but his argument was, given his experience at Anduril and given seeing what's happening on the front lines from a military perspective, he thinks that the Taiwan situation is inevitable and that we absolutely have to build our own chips, and the U.S. should literally give Intel $1 trillion to start building chips and replace TSM because we cannot be reliant on Taiwan anymore. Now, that's a bit dramatic. It's probably never going to happen, but it goes to show how some people think of the seriousness of the situation. It wasn't Garcia. It was a different friend I had. This friend actually joined Anduril about 3 years ago. And, he's worked at some high-level defense contractors before. Honestly, he was just bored. He kind of was pseudo-retired, and he felt like going back into corporate, and so he joined Anduril. And so I keep up with him every other month, and he's just like, yeah, dude, this Taiwan shit is real. Like, when Palmer Luckey gets on TV and says we have to seriously get our stockpiles up because China will make a move on Taiwan and everyone thinks he's fear-mongering, okay. But if it happens, it's going to be a much deeper situation. All right, what other headlines are we seeing here that are coming in? S&P still holding up. We're staying green. Up. I think this headline's kind of interesting. All right, top 10 stocks on IBKR that have been traded via volume. Nvda, Tesla, Microsoft, Palantir, Amazon, AMD, the QQQ, the triple QQQ, and the last two, SanDisk and Micron. Wow. Retail are piling in still to these tech names.
So that says that that investors, both domestically and globally, are looking for alternatives to the U.S. How many years did we hear that the phrase TINA, there is no alternative? Well, the rest of the world has decided, yeah, there are alternatives. And in many cases, they're cheaper or pay higher dividends or have growth prospects that are not already factored in. Looking at some of the U.S. stocks that are trading at stratospheric valuations, you don't have as many in Europe. And one of the problems I think that's been plaguing this market is when you have stocks, if not as a whole, but certainly within the market, priced to perfection, you better deliver perfection. And it's hard to do that on a sustained basis.
Which is why we're seeing that diversification again outside of the US. Those are your top 10 stocks, folks, on IBKR. Nvidia, Tesla, Microsoft, Palantir, Amazon, AMD, TQQQ, the QQQ, and then SanDisk and Micron. If it wasn't SanDisk or Micron, you would probably have Google up there. But you got two memory names instead, which absolutely means there's a bit of a retail trade in memory. Which, again, the irony of the South Korean index being up 40% year to date is that the South Koreans are the ones that love to gamble on high-tech growth stocks. I mean, South Koreans love these high beta names. Palantir, Tesla, IONQ is a massive, massive name in South Korea. And the fact that their index is up 40% this year because of memory is quite incredible. You didn't even have to leave the country to be able to get massive, massive returns, which speaks to the memory names, but it also speaks to the bubble, theoretically, that Citron says exists within SanDisk. SanDisk right here now down 3% on the day. Yeah, they do a ton of crypto volume as well. I mean, I think I showed you guys a video a while ago. South Korea had they have a e-trading or e-sports tournaments. South Korea had a trading tournament where people could live trade futures and people in audience could just watch them do it. I think that video came out in November and everyone was like, yeah, this is definitely the top. But Like the South Koreans love taking more risk. And as you can see right here from this chart, exports are surging 47% up year over year in the first 20 days of February. This is following a 34% gain in January. And obviously the surge was driven by semiconductor exports that are up 134% year over year, fueled by AI and data center demand. So South Korea continuing to gain this momentum. Kratos did have earnings yesterday. It was down 5. It's still down. It pumped a little bit. Still back down. I thought Kratos' earnings were pretty damn good. Guidance was a very slight miss, but adjusted EBITDA, revenue, and EPS all beat. Nvidia back at 192 again. HIMS still down 5%. HIMS is also under investigation. I forgot to mention that. They disclosed in their 10K that the SEC is investigating them for their compounded drugs. So that also is what kind of took this stock down to the low 14s last night. SEC has asked HIMS to preserve documents related to compounded GLP-1s. I mean, again, this stock has just been an absolute disaster. And it's one of those names that you had literally analysts come out today removing their price targets. That's how bad. They weren't downgrading them. They were like, yeah, we're going to act like we never had a price target on this stock. I think one of them had a $60 price target. Bank of America took it to $12.50. And then BTIG had a $60 price target. They removed the entire target. I mean, at this point, you can't even give a price target if it was at 60. So yeah, I mean, look, shit happens, but I wonder if the buyers step in. Stock's trading at 3.3 billion, price of sales of 1.5. I do think the subscriber growth was just abysmal. Like people already think HIMS doesn't have a moat. If you can't grow subscribers, it's tough, bro. Like what are people buying at that point? IGV is up 2. DocuSign up 4. We're seeing some red candles come in, but they're not necessarily getting hit too bad. Figma is still up 6 as well. Coinbase announced stock trading in the US. Coinbase talked about this a couple months ago. I don't know how many people are going to be trading tokenized stocks on Coinbase, but that is something decent for them. Opendoor is also trapping more bulls. Well, the one thing about Opendoor is that the CEO, first of all, I like the Opendoor CEO more than the HIM CEO. I like his level of confidence and the way he speaks more. And I mean, they are guiding to be profitable by the end of the year, which, would be a big change in the trajectory of Opendoor. But once again, I don't get the business model. I really don't get it. You buy a house for $500,000, you sell it for $505,000. You're going through all this shit to sell a house and make a measly margin. And, people are saying the stock's going to $82. I don't know. I don't see it. I really, really don't see it. And remember, the stock was at 10. Now it's at 5. So it obviously, it's different to have a thesis on a company and the stock doesn't necessarily reflect your thesis on the company, but the stock is growing. You're seeing margins go up. Maybe it's not growing like 50%, but you're seeing a compounded rate that is sustainable. And then you see something like Opendoor with these ridiculous price targets, which, you don't have any understanding of if it could ever get to those levels. And then you just ask yourself, well, what was the point of the thesis? I think that's the broader fear with companies like Opendoor and HIMS. AppLovin going green. That's holding on. Bloom Energy, that's also up 6.5. The energy names have been, wow, Bloom almost at 170 right here, which is not too bad. Yeah, Cypher, we saw their earnings, although they missed on EPS. This stock right here, 1611. That's up 5.8% right now. All the data center plays holding up. People said the same thing with Carvana. Yeah, I mean, look, if you think Opendoor is the next Carvana, then I guess it's going to 82. But Carvana going from 4 to 400, that doesn't easily get replicated. Just because it's happened on one stock doesn't mean it's going to happen on another stock. So I don't know if that easily happens with Opendoor. Even if you bring mortgage rates down, I don't know how much that gets the margins to be up. But I do like the CEO's confidence. And I'm happy that he's running the ship. Google's about to go green, folks. Google was stuck all day, 305 to 309. Again, Google did almost 50% cloud growth, and the market did not care. So maybe we're going to see a change. You did have Goolsby, who is just live. Let's see what he had to say. Goolsby, again, doesn't look like he's the most bullish. He actually voted against a rate cut, I think, last time. I think he was one presented. So once again, he's a bit more concerned around the idea of inflation. Let's pull this up.
It's just we must get inflation down from this 3% level that we've been stalled out at for now a year or more.
Well, now you've got this whole new tariff uncertainty from the Supreme Court. President's going to impose, well, he started today, a 10% tariff universally. Brings down the tariff rate some, but they say they're going to use other means to get the tariff rates back up to about where they were. So now you'll have this dip perhaps in inflation, and then it could go back out again. So you said you want to see inflation going down. Does that get pushed out? Does it become later in this year when you can even think about it?
I don't think so. I think when I'm out in the 7th district in the Midwest talking to folks, they talk a lot about uncertainty, policy uncertainties, geopolitical uncertainties. The thing to remember about the tariffs, even if the tariffs stay exactly as they were, just in a different form, the inflation impact is supposed to go away. So if the rates are lower than what they were before, that should make it even more true that we should see the inflation going down. I think that the policy uncertainty, we're seeing more on the labor side. I think the low hiring, low firing environment is what you would expect when there's a lot of uncertainty. That's not really what the beginning of a recession looks like. Low hiring with high layoffs, that's what the beginning of a recession looks like. For both of those to be low is a bit of a weird duck, and I think is explained by a lot of, we want to wait and see what's going to happen. And so if you have question marks coming from the Supreme Court, coming from other policy responses, I think you're likely to see continuation of that low hiring, low firing environment.
Well, they want to see before they would be willing to hire again.
What they tend to say is, we want to know what the rules of the road are going to be. And right now we don't know what the rules of the road are going to be. And there could be very significant changes. Look, I'm sympathetic with that. The rules are moving around. If you're in a business like the auto industry, the Chicago Fed District has by far the most auto production in the United States. It's a global supply chain for the auto industries. They're very amped up about what will be the treatment of parts, components, supplies that they use to make the cars. So far, they were pleasantly surprised that anything USMCA compliant was kind of exempted. Now, if the rumors are to be true that whatever, they might renegotiate the USMCA, or would Canada be in the USMCA? Of course, that's what they're going to express uncertainty about things like that, and it's going to affect their decisions in the short run. Over the long run, as I say, I still think the American consumer has been pretty solid. We've got a steady job market. If we make progress on inflation, I think rates are trending down.
Well, we've seen.
I mean, again, if he thinks the labor market is solid, we're not getting this rate cut. It's just not happening. If he thinks the labor market is less solid than not, then we might have a chance for the rate cut. But I mean, if there's more Fed presidents that feel the concerns around AI and the labor market are not as reasonable, then we're not getting a cut until Kevin Warsh comes in. Kevin Warsh seems to be one of the only people that actually, him and Waller, that actually understand AI is going to be deflationary for jobs. But the rest of the Fed presidents don't seem like that. By the way, it looks like Coinbase is not using tokenized stocks. It looks like they're just straight up allowing stock trading. So I guess Coinbase is now competing with all the brokerages. If this is correct, Coinbase opens stock trading to everyone in the U.S. partners with Yahoo Finance to power discovery. I'm curious to see what it feels like to buy stocks on Coinbase. I guess they've officially become a brokerage. I didn't know they could just do that. I feel like you have to go through the regulatory stuff, but maybe maybe they can just enable it. So there you go. Coinbase now into stock trading. Again, I don't know how many people are actually going to trade stocks on Coinbase, but they kind of have to do this though, because people aren't trading crypto right now. So technically, yeah, they need to have different ideas here. Amazon's tax bill fell 87% last year due to Trump and the GOP's big bill. The company fired 30,000 workers and the profits have gone up 43.5%, reaching $89.5 billion. World Trade Organization, U.S. notified its decision to appeal the panel report in a case initiated by China. The panel will also review Indian measures on batteries and electric vehicles. The U.S. appeals tax credits report. All right, so a bunch of more things Trump's going to probably discuss on this State of the Union today as well. By the way, the whole Netflix Warner Brothers stuff continues to be an ongoing saga as Warner Brothers is now reviewing the new offer from Paramount. And it looks like there's a world in which Paramount might have a shot. Crypto.com also got a preliminary banking license. Yeah, it's like all the crypto companies and the brokerage companies are exchanging ideas. Some of them want to become banks. Others want to become brokerages. All of them want to trade crypto. I mean, SoFi has been trying to get into crypto. Apple, by the way, 274. Nvda, 192. AppLovin, 382. Zeta got a nice run going into earnings, but again, we're going to have to see what earnings look like. Up 7% right here. Yeah, they're all pivoting away from Bitcoin. Coin does have prediction markets as well. But again, like the majority of prediction markets right now is sports, and the majority of that volume is happening on Hood and Kalshi. So I don't think it's going to be incrementally that accretive to Coinbase right now. Polymarket's the only like mainstream crypto platform that has prediction markets. That's why I don't get the coin long thesis. You know, a lot of people are interested in it because of the multiple, but I'm like, dude, first of all, if Bitcoin's dead, like, first of all, if Bitcoin's dead, Robinhood's already getting hit, but at least there's other things Robinhood can do to diversify from it. If Bitcoin's dead for Coinbase, Coinbase is dead. Like, they make money off people trading crypto. If sentiment's gone on crypto, now that means Coinbase, when things bottom, becomes a great long. Coinbase bottomed at 35 back in 23, and then it ran up to 400 as Bitcoin ran up. So whenever the cycle shifts, Coinbase is an absolute buy. But maybe not right now. Oh boy, is that a real headline? Telegraph, China to send Iran aircraft carrier with new missiles. Oh boy. Is that true? Is China getting involved in this shit now? I mean, they probably want to play a role here. Bloomberg says NATO's aerial monitoring focus has shifted from Russia to Iran. Trying to see if I can get more of these headlines from China. That's coming from the Telegraph. Yeah, there it is. China to send Iran aircraft with more missiles. You know, the only reason they would be sending it is because they think there's a real practical shot that the United States is going to attack. Right? Like if they thought the United States was just posturing, which again, maybe Trump is just posturing, but they wouldn't be sending if they didn't think there was a shot. The Chinese obviously also support the Iranians, especially if it goes against the U.S. One plane won't do anything. Yeah, that's fair. It's just the fact that they're sending them weapons, dude, is crazy. I guess we have to put that on our list of things to watch out for as well. China's refreshing poly market. Oh my gosh. We got a clip from Warren right here talking about Kevin Warsh. Let's pull that up. I'm curious if she actually likes Kevin Warsh or not.
When I saw some of your comments opposing Kevin Warsh to be the next Fed chair, you know, it's someone that, you know, his first time around as governor, he was brought to the floor by Senator Schumer. At the time, it was a long time ago, but why is this someone? Do you not think he's qualified?
Well, my concern is that Kevin Warsh has made his whole career being an inflation hawk. He is the guy who, even after the crash in 2008, was no, don't lower interest rates. We got to keep those interest rates high. If you said, Kevin Warsh, what would you say about interest rates? High interest rates. That's what he believes in. Right up until he thinks he's got a shot at being named Donald Trump's chairman of the Federal Reserve. And at that moment, Kevin Warsh does a 180-degree turn. And he says, lower those interest rates, lower those interest rates. He even goes on Fox News and parrots a bunch of fake stuff about lowering costs and how Trump has lowered costs for American consumers. What that tells me is that Kevin Warsh is not a guy who'll make an independent economic decision. It tells me Kevin Warsh is a sock puppet. He knows what Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump has already said.
You know, economists change their views on policy all the time. When the facts change, I mean, you yourself, you argued for lower interest rates before and were critical of Powell, and now, you know, and more recently, you've been critical of the low interest rates because you think it's Trump.
Kevin Warsh, following the 2008 crash, was the guy who still wanted to keep interest rates up. Those are kind of facts change. He has been a high interest rate guy in good times, in bad times, in scary times, in happy times. It has been his one constant until he wanted the job of Fed chair. And
so she's right that Kevin Warsh has always been hawkish around inflation. However, his thoughts on AI, I think, is what she's missing there. He did an interview a couple months ago explicitly discussing where he thinks AI is leading the labor market to go and where it's leading inflation to go. And, you know, I think he's made the most logical argument out of any of the Fed presidents around what impact AI will actually have. And maybe it's because Kevin Warsh has also spent time in the tech sector, so he can kind of see a little bit more of the deflationary impacts of it. It is confusing, regardless, why Trump picked him. Because once again, the reason I think the markets freaked out the day he was announced 3 weeks ago was that, yeah, he's seen as a hawk. And a hawk wouldn't necessarily want to cut rates that easily. But I guess if he factors in the AI conversation, and that's what he kind of told Trump he would be thinking of, like, there's no way Trump picked him and he's not lowering rates. That's just like, I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that the reason Trump picked him is because he gave him a reassurance that he would cut rates. But, you know, time will tell if we're actually going to get those rate cuts. It's just his perspective on AI, I think, is what's fueling the need to get those cuts. We'll keep updated with this China-Iran headline. All right, we're getting some more analysis right here. Iran is close to buying the CM-302 supersonic cruise missiles from China, according to Reuters, capable of destroying U.S. aircraft carriers. Negotiations have gone on for 2 years and accelerated after last June's Israel-Iran conflict. China previously sold weapons to Iran in the 1980s. Wow, this is the first time they're selling in almost 40 years, and continues to back Tehran politically. Meanwhile, Iran's Revolutionary Guards have conducted multiple drills in the Gulf and Strait of Hormuz, testing new missiles and tactics while internal protests continue at Tehran universities. Now, look, I don't think CM-302 supersonic cruise missiles are necessarily going to beat the United States in a full-on conflict. But the fact that Iran is trying to buy them means that they're preparing for a full-on conflict. It's kind of wild, though. They haven't bought weapons from China since the 80s. You're obviously seeing a shift in terms of how they're thinking of military action. Now, again, the Iranian foreign ministry for the past couple of days has come out and said we are ready to work with the U.S. But if they know the thing the U.S. wants is a complete dismissal of the nuclear weapons policy, and Iran's just not going to agree to that, well, then I guess the inevitability is some type of attack. 647 on SanDisk. That stock still down 3%. Yeah, I mean, correct. If we were to criticize China for doing that, China would be like, well, you're selling weapons to Taiwan. So China's gonna be like, if you can sell weapons to Taiwan, we can sell weapons to Iran. U.S. military has begun moving 12 F-22 stealth fighter jets toward the Middle East after they were stationed at an airbase in the United Kingdom in recent days. What are the poly market odds on this Iran war? It's got to be closer to 40%. Okay, so March 15th has the most volume. There's a 48% chance we attack on March 15th. There's a 60% chance we attack on March 31st. It's kind of crazy, dude. People are betting on when we're going to attack, but like that's where the volume is, which is a couple weeks from now. It's just, dude, we live in a world where we can literally make money off of when we think an attack is going to happen. It's crazy, bro. Degen's betting on World War III, yeah. I mean, to be fair, the stock market is also weight. I mean, if you were to go long a defense contractor before the, like, you know, it's another way to monetize it. That's pretty crazy. Meta goes green, 637. It was at 629. Duolingo 108. IGV, that's still up 1.7. I mean, the Saas bump has lasted today. ServiceNow still up 3. CRM still up 4. You're not really seeing those moves get faded. Zeta's up. S&P holding a nice 686 print right there. I feel like if nothing happens throughout the day, we could probably end out green. And tonight we do have a lot of earnings, but Nvidia is going to be the big one tomorrow that we watch out for. It's before the dates, not the exact dates. Oh, yeah, you're right. It is before the dates. Oh, you're right. Yeah, because it's U.S. strikes Iran by, not on. Okay, so that means there's 50% of the vote assuming that an attack will happen in the next 2 weeks, even if it's not exactly on March 15th. All right, we're going to see how that ends up playing out. Nebius, are we moving on Nebius? That is green slightly. CoreWeave was more green throughout the day. Fell a little bit. Iran actually had one of the better days. That's up 4. Netflix went green. It feels like a recovery day, even though we haven't recovered to the levels that we were at yesterday at the top from yesterday. And at least it's nice to not be in too bloody red. I mean, yesterday was ugly. But, you know, I think a lot of this is just non-action until we can see what Nvidia ultimately comes out with. And we'll know on Wednesday for Nvidia. All right. Is that pretty much it? Let's see what else we got. It's 11 a.m. right here. Kind of survived the 10:30 slam. Oh, wow. I mean, we could end out the show with this. We got Tom Lee, 7 reasons for why it feels like we are in a bear market. Okay, let's take a listen to this and then we'll be done for today.
1%. And as you can see, looking at this chart, it is a little jaggedy, but the trend is higher. But here are the reasons why I think it feels like a bear market. First is that gold has done so well that it's created FOMO, or fear of missing out. Here's the thing. Gold has actually done so well, and it's partly because of geopolitical risks, that it's now larger than the S&P 500 in terms of market cap. So the S&P XMAG 7 is actually smaller than the gold market. And as I've said before and many times in the past, a continued rise in precious metals is not sending a great signal for equities for multiple reasons, but part of it, of course, is it's a vortex for risk appetite. The second is there's been a rotation in what I call armies versus bullets. The armies are the Mag 7 and the bullets are the AI suppliers. As you can see, markets have rotated from favoring armies, which are the companies that have great businesses, to the arms makers. But here's the thing. We've now created a valuation discrepancy. In the past, the armies always traded at a premium to the bullet makers. But as you can see, in 2026, that has flipped. And now the armies traded at more than a 3-point PE discount to the bullet makers. Does that make sense? I don't know. But here you go. You can see, if you look at the bullet makers, semis, power generation, and infrastructure now trade at higher PE multiples than the Mag 7. I think there's going to be a rotation back later this year. And so you have to be mindful of that. The third is that AI continues to be roiling sectors. It's, I guess, AI rampage. The latest being software. And keep in mind, people had talked for years about software eating the world, but now AI is eating the software industry. And so I think investors are taking a fire aim ready approach, meaning they're first selling everything before they decide if they actually want to buy anything. And keep in mind, there are AI resilient stocks out there. So software has fallen to the lowest prime brokerage exposure ever, according to Goldman Sachs. Crypto's also been under pressure. A lot of that has to do with the outperformance of gold and risk appetite. The Fed, with the new Fed chair, the market's trying to understand this new Fed chair, and I'll talk about it in another video, but the market always tests the new Fed chair as well. Tangentially, keep in mind the Epstein files, I think, have continued to sort of remain a headline story, and it's creating a lot of high-profile embarrassments. And of course, most recently, private credit is again resurfacing because of some of the concerns about companies like Blue Owl, and people believe there's echoes of the GFC. Now, something that is roiling markets, but I don't think it's making it feel like a bear market, is the tariffs. The Supreme Court, not surprisingly, overturned Trump's tariffs, and President Trump, in turn, is actually implementing, well, originally a 10% tariff, but now it's 15%. And he has authorities to actually levy tariffs, so it's not like it's going away. So now let's talk about the granny rebalance, because that happens every.
Okay, so those were the 7 reasons. Essentially, gold, tariffs, AI, commoditizing Saas, the Fed chair, crypto, and then the Epstein files. And then you also have private credit. I mean, I think those are reasonable reasons for why things can feel bearish. But, you know, the S&P being flat for the year is not necessarily a bear market, even though certain names are feeling it's a bear market. Look at the S&P go, almost 687. I mean, that's helping a lot of these names right here. If she can make that move up, that would be a complete reversal from the pain of yesterday. S&P right there, 686.7 is what we got on the day. All right, I think that is it. We will be live tomorrow, or not tomorrow, tonight and tomorrow. We'll be live for earnings tomorrow. It's going to be a long day today. So we have the market close. We'll have probably a 2-hour break between the market close and the State of the Union, and then we'll be live for State of the Union. Workday, Lucid, First Solar, Kava, Axon, HP, Zeta, Navitas, Transmedics, Mercado Libre, and Tempus is what we have today for the earnings. And after that, we will have Technical Tuesday. And that'll be pretty much it for today. Pretty much it for today. And then tomorrow, obviously, we've got NVIDIA. We'll have a lot of people live, and hopefully NVIDIA can deliver. Because if they don't, it'll be ugly. But I think they will. NVIDIA 193, are we cracking that? 193, look at that. Maybe this fades away by the middle of the day, but the fact that we're making some of those levels. NVIDIA 2 green days in a row. I mean, if Jensen can deliver, maybe this changes a lot of the narrative for what we have right now. I never watched State of the Union. I'm not starting a new trend tonight. I mean, it's not the most entertaining thing to watch. It's really going to be Trump just bragging and essentially doing a campaign speech. But there's a lot of dynamics that have changed over the past couple of weeks, which it'll be important to see kind of how Trump talks and navigates this stuff. Okay, what do we got on word of the day? Intransigent. 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 Unwilling or refusing to change one's views or agree about something. Being intransient when the data shifts isn't conviction, it's a liability. I think I got this one. There's no way I got this shit wrong, dude. Intransient. I can't get this shit wrong.
Intransigent.
Okay, they're like sounding out the G-E-N-T there. Intransigent. I thought it just flowed together. Intransient. All right, that's not that crazy. I don't think people are really spelling out the G.
Intransigent.
Intransit. Now it sounds like a J more than a G, but whatever. Intransigent. That's what we got. Yeah, let's look at the stock draft before we leave. We haven't looked at that in a bit. All right, it's the same order. So Matt's up 24. I'm up 12. Steve's down 1. Tanner's up 7. Chris is down 2.7. So it's Matt, Amit, Tanner, Steve, Chris. And yeah, I mean, the percentage gains have changed, but the order has been relatively the same for the past couple months now. And after NVIDIA earnings, we're going to see how the market changes from there as well. My biggest loss is Duolingo. Matt's biggest loss is Bros. Tanner's biggest loss is Trade Desk. Steve's biggest loss is MicroStrategy. Chris's biggest loss is Axon. So those are the names in the broader stock draft. Matt is a lock to win solely because of space. Yeah, I mean, if the SpaceX IPO continues on the trajectory, then, I mean, Rocket Lab and ASTS, he's up both double on those. Like, those should probably get it for him towards the end of the year. All right, that's what we got, folks. Thank you all for being here. We'll be live on the close. We got a lot of earnings. Technical Tuesday. We'll get through all this stuff. And then tomorrow we got NVIDIA. And we'll see what happens with NVIDIA. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one. I'll see you guys later today for earnings and Technical Tuesday. Bye, everybody. Have a good one.